Chapter 150. After the carnival night, Feng Hong took 3 days off as usual. Suwon returned to the Su house with Su Rue at noon the next day. When she entered the door, she saw Su Haiqing, who was rarely free, accompanying Wen Shu to eat. Wen Shu's complexion was much better, but Su Rue had already told her that even if the remaining poison in her body was expelled, according to her current physical condition, she only had 2 years of life left at most. Wen Shu, who knew that she would not live long, did not seem particularly depressed. Now she cherished her time with her loved ones more. Xiao Wan, Xiao Qi, you're back. Come over to eat. Wen Shu smiled and waved to the two people. Suwon also smiled at her. Mom, Xiao Qi and I have eaten outside. You guys eat slowly. Right. Suwon looked at the empty seats in the dining room. Has Jiangyu not come back yet? It's rare that you still care about your sister. Su Haiqing slowly put down his chopsticks and glanced at Suwon. Yesterday, your class teacher called and said that she would take Xiaoyu to participate in an academic activity these days. Xiaowan, you really should learn more from your sister. Of course, Mom and Dad don't expect you to be in the top 3, as long as you don't always wander in the bottom. Suwon. Although the original owner's appearance was a schoolbelle, her grades could only be a joke. In contrast, Jiangyu, who transferred to another school and worked hard, got the first place in the class in the final exam of last semester. Therefore, it was obvious that the Su family's husband and wife did not have any doubts about Wen Qinshuo's lies. They were really relieved to hand over their daughter to him. Got it. I will also work hard to get into the top 3 this semester. Leaving this sentence, Suwon pulled Su Rue upstairs quickly. In fact, it was not a delusion for her to get the first place in the whole year, but Suwon didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. After the new year, the person she had been waiting for should appear, Jinglai, the leader of the Inferno gang in D-City. In the original plot, Jinglai was saved by Jiangyu, and the two were also very passionate. Compared with Wen Hao's sentimentality, Jinglai was much more infatuated, and it was precisely this infatuated boss who was particularly crazy and cool. As long as it was someone who was not good to Jiangyu, he would clean them up. The original owner, Jiangyu, was just one of the cannon fodder that Jinglai had cleaned up. It was rare for Su Rue to rest for a day. Naturally, he accompanied his wife. The next day, when Su Rue went to work with a refreshed face, he saw Jiangyu waiting for a long time at the door of his company. Big Brother Xiao. Catching a glimpse of Su Rue's figure, Jiangyu immediately stood up and called him. Before she said anything, her eyes were red. Jiangyu felt that she was living in a dream these 2 days. First, she broke up with Luo Yu, and then with Teacher Wan. She ran out of Wen Hao's house and wandered on strange streets. Jiangyu suddenly began to miss the small county town in her hometown and her childhood playmate. She subconsciously wanted to call Xiao Qi, but unfortunately, her number had already been blacklisted by Su Rue. Fortunately, Jiangyu still had Xiao Yunyi's number. She called directly to the set. Xiao Yunyi, who was filming, had actually been in contact with his brother. He was a very simple person. Seeing that Jiangyu wanted his brother's work address, he sent the address to Jiangyu's mobile phone without thinking. As a result, Su Rue was met by Jiangyu. Su Rue felt a headache when he saw Jiangyu. This female lead Darren couldn't be killed. Even if he beat her, he would feel that he was degrading himself. It was endless to be entangled by her. In the past, when General Su first came into contact with TV and computers, he felt that the female protagonists in those melodramatic TV dramas were as tenacious as cockroaches. After meeting Jiangyu, General Su finally understood that there was always someone better than you, Big Brother Xiao. Seeing that Su Rue ignored her, Jiangyu called out again in a low voice, and tears were already swirling in her eyes. Without Luo Yu's careful care, the first person Jiangyu thought of when something happened was Xiao Qi. Those memories of her youth are now like her life-saving straw. She even feels that even if the whole world abandons her, Big Brother Xiao will not. In fact, Xiao Qi is indeed the most affectionate supporting actor in the world. He has been silently guarding Jiangyu for many years. Unfortunately, Jiangyu does not understand this kind of feeling and does not know how to cherish this man. After she entered Feng Hong, she was gradually attracted by Luo Yu's strength. After being with Luo Yu, Jiangyu began to entangle with Luo Yu's best friend, Wen Hao, because of her rotten kindness. Later, she was eaten up by Wen Hao. In fact, what is the so-called love? The young and soft-hearted Jiang Yu has a strong martial force, but when it comes to love, she has always been indecisive and wavering. In the face of all kinds of men's advances, she will not refuse. She thinks that she doesn't want to hurt others, but in fact, she just keeps releasing ambiguous signals to others that they can continue. A woman's indecisiveness is equivalent to a man's womanizing. In the original world, Luo Yu was Jiang Yu's first man, and he was also responsible for her. Luo Yu had always been with Jiang Yu until he discovered the unclear relationship between Jiang Yu and Wen Hao. At that time, Luo Yu loved Jiang Yu deeply. Although he also wanted to break up later, true love overcame everything. This kind of feeling, because I love you, even if you love me, you still love others, I don't mind. Please forgive General Su for his inability to understand. I love you, and you happen to love me. We love each other deeply and regard each other as the only one. Su Rue felt that if there is a definition of true love, it should probably be like this. So for those who can NPC with other men because of true love, and because of true love, they accept that their man has countless women. These people in Su Rue's view belong to the group of people who are seriously retarded and have long given up treatment. And at this moment, Su Rue was standing in front of such a person. Didn't you go out with Teacher Wen? Su Rue saw Jiang Yu was about to cry at any time, and couldn't help but look at her knowingly. You came back by yourself? Why didn't you go home? Big brother Xiao. As soon as she heard Su Rue mention Wen Hao, Jiang Yu's face immediately changed. The scenes of last night were still very clear in her mind. She really didn't want to, but she still had sex with Wen Hao after half a push. Now, Jiang Yu doesn't know how to talk to Xiao Qi about this matter. It's too difficult to talk about it. But she felt so uncomfortable in her heart. She missed Big Brother Zhao's broad shoulders and warm embrace. Yes, when Wen Hao carried her off the dance floor last night, she leaned into that embrace. In fact, she had been thinking about Xiao Qi in her heart. She felt that the embrace was as warm as Xiao Qi's embrace. Every time she was in the most difficult situation, when she needed someone to help her the most, Xiao Qi would appear. Unfortunately, that was only in the past. In the original plot world, Jiang Yu, who had always been sheltered by Luo Yu, used her whole life to love so many men, but after all, she never found Xiao Qi good. Now, Jiang Yu, who had suffered continuous setbacks, suddenly realized that her feelings for Xiao Qi had long been different. If this is a rebirth script, then the female lead will definitely be reborn immediately, and then return to her youth to reunite with her childhood sweetheart. Chapter 151. At work time, the number of employees in and out of the company began to increase. In order to prevent Jiang Yu from accidentally injuring others, Su Rue finally brought her to his office. Although this online game studio is not well known now, Su Rue has already contacted several multinational consortiums. Now he is only waiting for the game to be tested and officially launched at the International Online Games Summit after the new year. Sit down. Su Rue entered his office and habitually took off his suit and put it on his boss' chair. When he turned around, he carelessly loosened the tie around his neck. Jiang Yu has been paying attention to Su Rue's movements. She glimpsed the red dark mark half covered on his neckline. Jiang Yu hurriedly lowered her eyes, but she still couldn't help but think of the scene of Su Rue kissing Su Wan in the corridor on the second floor that day. For a moment, Jiang Yu's heart was a little sour. What's the matter? At this time, Su Rue was already sitting lazily in his chair. He lazily raised his eyelids and looked at Jiang Yu indifferently. Brother Xiao, Jiang Yu took a deep breath and wanted to tell him everything in one go, but the words seemed to have left her mouth. Brother Xiao, do you know about Su Wan and Luo Yu? And? Su Rue raised his eyebrows. Why is this dialogue so familiar? By the way, it seems that the female lead in a certain world said this to him. Su Rue frowned and thought for a long time, and finally remembered that the female lead in a certain online game world said similar words to him. Birds of a feather flock together. It seems that there are a lot of commonalities between some female leads. Su Wan and Luo Yu used to be a couple. Jiang Yu sat on the sofa and said slowly, later, Luo Yu and Su Wan broke up and began to pursue me. I really refused him at that time, but Su Wan always misunderstood me and thought that I stole his love. So she, you mean she was with me to retaliate against you? Su Rue leaned sideways, supporting the table with one hand, and meaningfully completed the half of Jiang Yu's sentence that she did not finish. You know? Jiang Yu heard Su Rue's words, but suddenly raised her eyes and looked at him blankly. No, my ass. Jiang Yu, are you still asleep? Su Rue pointed at her eyes. Which eye of yours saw that Su Wan was with me to take revenge on you? Even if she really wants to retaliate against you, she should try her best to take Luo Yu away from you. Why is she looking for me? I don't like you. Could it be that you like me? I don't. I'm not. Jiang Yu's stuttering face immediately turned red. She didn't realize her feelings for Xiaoqi before. Jiang Yu could face such words calmly, but now, when Jiang Yu was in a daze, Su Rue had already stood up and walked slowly to the sofa where Jiang Yu was sitting. Could it be that you really like me? Su Rue suddenly bent down, his hands supporting the back of the sofa, and his whole body almost stuck to Jiang Yu. Jiang Yu returned to her senses and looked at the man close at hand. She felt that she was surrounded by his breath. Jiang Yu's heart suddenly skipped a beat. At this moment, not only her face, but even her entire neck was red. Watching Su Rue's face getting closer, Jiang Yu's eyelashes trembled and she unconsciously closed her eyes. Heh. A cold laughter suddenly sounded in Jiang Yu's ears. You're so cheap. Does Wenhao know? Jiang Yu opened her eyes abruptly and met Su Rue's dark and indifferent eyes. You. Jiang Yu looked at Su Rue incredulously. Why does he know? Jiang Yu, I feel sick when I look at you. Do you know that? Su Rue shook his head in disgust and skillfully took out the brocade handkerchief he carried with him and wiped his hands. It was really distressing. He was so close just now, and now he felt uncomfortable all over his body. When Su Rue was distressed, Jiang Yu on the sofa was pale. Disgusting. Jiang Yu's tears finally burst out. Her big brother Xiao said she was disgusting. But what did she do wrong? Su Wan robbed her of her identity. Did she even care about a single cent? She gave in to her sister in every aspect and greeted her with a smile every day, but she refused to let her go. Now, Su Wan even robbed her big brother Xiao. Big brother Xiao, what's so good about Su Wan? She can satisfy you. I can too. Jiang Yu stood up in a trance and wanted to grab Su Rue's sleeves, but Su Rue shook her off. Get lost. The huge push made Jiang Yu stumble and fall to the ground. Her forehead hit the corner of the sofa, and blood flowed from her forehead, dyeing Jiang Yu's sight red. It hurts. Her body hurts, and her heart hurts. She can no longer find the big brother Xiao who cared for her so much. The man in front of her looked at her with only indifference and disgust. Xiaoqi, Xiaoqi. Jiang Yu called his name heartbreakingly, but the man in front of her didn't seem to see her wound or her blood. He just walked to the desk indifferently and pressed the company's internal line. Call 2 security guards up. Immediately. Looking at Jiang Yu for one more second, Su Rue felt that he couldn't help but chop her up and feed her to the dog. When the company's security guards walked into the office, they saw the woman sitting on the ground with blood and tears on her face. What's going on? Take this crazy woman away. Don't let her near our company in the future. Hearing Su Rue's cold command, the 2 security guards at the door immediately obediently stepped forward and pulled Jiang Yu up from the ground. At this time, Jiang Yu seemed to have lost her soul. She let the 2 people help her out of Su Rue's company. She leaned against the corner powerlessly and looked at the company's doorplate in a trance. Su Chengwanyu. This was the name of Su Rue's studio. Su Chengwanyu, Su Wan. Su Wan. Hee. Jiang Yu's eyes gradually became cold. She felt that she was too weak and kind to let Su Wan be so insatiable. She must fight back. She wanted everyone to see how vicious Su Wan was. Chapter 152. Jiang Yu returned to the Su house on the last night of the holiday. When she returned home, Jiang Yu still looked the same as before. When she saw Su Wan, she would still take the initiative to greet her with a smile, but Su Wan was used to ignoring her. At the dinner table, when Shu's face was not very good, Su Haiqing gave her food with a worried face. But when Shu's eyes were constantly looking at Jiang Yu's body. After dinner, when Shu called Jiang Yu to her room alone, and soon there was a quarrel between the mother and daughter in the room. Su Haiqing had been reading the newspaper downstairs. When he heard the faint quarrel coming from upstairs, he frowned and immediately put down the newspaper and turned to go upstairs. Su Wan and Su Rue were lazily sitting on the sofa at this time. Today, there was Su Wan's favorite reality show, and the two were concentrating on watching it. As for the matter between Jiang Yu and Wen Shu, Su Wan felt that it was better not to intervene. And Su Rue, who was leaning on Su Wan, didn't care about it at all. When Su Haiqing arrived on the second floor, before he could open the door, he heard Jiang Yu's excited voice coming from the room. "Why are you prejudiced against me? I am your biological daughter. You are always on Su Wan's side. You have never regarded me as your daughter. Since you don't want me, I will not continue to stay here." Jiang Yu in the room seemed to be a little too excited. Su Haiqing could only hear her voice. When he was about to open the door was forcefully pulled open from the inside. Jiang Yu's eyes were red, and she seemed to be stunned when she saw Su Haiqing in front of her. The next second, she bit her lip and quickly ran past Su Haiqing. "Wen Shu, Xiaoyu, she." Su Haiqing's words were halfway through. When his eyes fell on Wen Shu's body, he saw her pale face and trembling body. Su Haiqing immediately panicked. He quickly came to the bedside and held Wen Shu's crumbling body with both hands. "Wen Shu, don't scare me." "I'm fine, Brother Cheng. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Wen Shu's eyes eagerly looked at Su Haiqing's face, and her eyes were full of guilt. If it weren't for her body being too weak, her and Brother Cheng's child would not have been taken away, and Jiang Yu would not have grown up like this. Wen Shu, who was born in a scholarly family, was actually a very traditional woman. The century-old Wen family had very strict family rules. Although the Wen family would not give girls some virginity, they had a set of methods that could be passed down for many years to verify whether a girl was still a virgin. On that day, Su Rue wanted to stay in the Su family and live with Wen Shu. Su Haiqing disagreed at first, but Wen Shu gently agreed to Su Rue's request. This was not because Su Rue saved her, but because she was grateful. On one hand, Wen Shu felt that Su Rue was very reliable. The main reason was that Wen Shu realized that although Su Rue and Su Wan had been living together, the two people actually did not have a substantial relationship. After all, Su Wan was only 17 years old. She was in her youth and Su Rue was also full of vigor. Although the two were a little intimate, they always guarded each other's line of defense. That was the respect for love. Wen Shu understood very well that a man will treat you like this if he really loves you and cherishes you. Therefore, she recognized this son-in-law. Wen Shu always knew that she would die soon. It turned out that she was most worried about Su Wan. She was afraid that her daughter, who was spoiled since childhood, would have a big temper and a strong personality. She would eventually encounter trouble in the future. Fortunately, there was a person who was worth entrusting to take care of her. Wen Shu felt that even if she left, she would not have any regrets. Unexpectedly, Jiang Yu, who had always been the most obedient and sensible in her eyes, would have such a thing happen. Wen Shu wanted to talk to Jiang Yu. She felt that she had not fulfilled her responsibilities as a mother. She spoiled Su Wan too much that she developed a big missy temper. Now, she wanted to talk to Jiang Yu. She didn't want her daughter, who she had finally found, to be cheated by a man outside. But what Wen Shu didn't expect was that she had just asked about the man, and Jiang Yu started to quarrel with her excitedly. "Why can Su Wan and I can't?" It turned out that Jiang Yu had always minded. She minded the existence of Su Wan, minded the person who took away her biological parents and her identity. Human nature is like this. When Su Wan was grumpily jealous and kept away from everyone with all irrational behavior, Jiang Yu stood at a high place and tried to save her with a compassionate attitude. People will involuntarily sympathize with the weak. Yes, no matter what Su Wan does, when she is abandoned by her lover and even hated by her relatives, she has become a failed weak person. For such a Su Wan, Jiang Yu can help her without scruples and even accept her unreasonable behavior again and again. This will only show Jiang Yu's tolerance and magnanimity. But when everything changed direction, when Su Wan had her own love, when she had a man who regarded her as a treasure, when she could openly smile in front of everyone and say that she was just a country bumpkin, when no one looked down on her, she could still continue to live happily and confidently. At the same time, Jiang Yu lost the people who loved her and the people she loved again and again. At this time, she could no longer smile and wish Su-won well. She was jealous of everything Su-won had. All of that, she felt that it should be her own. There is a Pandora's box in everyone's heart. Once opened, it will release the devil hidden in your heart. In the end, Jiang Yu stubbornly packed her luggage and left the Su family. In the cold night of D-City, the sky was filled with snowflakes. Jiang Yu stood outside the Su family's villa and looked at the bright lights inside. She subconsciously grasped the mobile phone in her hand, and finally, she gritted her teeth and dialed the phone number. Teacher 1, this is Jiang Yu. Jiang Yu's departure also set off a lot of waves in the Su family. Su-won also ran away from home before, but Su Haiqing had long understood her temper. He knew that the eldest miss couldn't stand the hardships. She would come back after a few days, but Jiang Yu was different. She was very independent and very stubborn. When she left, when Shu intended to stop her, but her body was too weak. Su Haiqing knew about Jiang Yu's matter, and he was still angry with his daughter. Seeing that his wife was so angry that she almost fainted, Su Haiqing simply stopped when Shu and did not let her chase after her. After such a thing, Jiang Yu should have grown up. People will experience a lot of setbacks in their lives. Su Haiqing has personally experienced a lot of storms and waves, and he also watched Su-won go through setbacks again and again, changing from a bad-tempered eldest miss to such an obedient and sensible appearance. Perhaps it would be a good thing for Jiang Yu to suffer some setbacks outside. Outside the window, snowflakes fluttered. Su-won stood in front of the window, and Su-rue behind her gently hugged her. The two watched through the transparent window as when Wenhao drove a black car to pick up Jiang Yu. For a man, what is too easy to get will never be cherished, Su-won whispered. In fact, when Wenhao's identity was not low, and he was also a real playboy. In the original world, he was so obsessed with Jiang Yu. One reason was that the female lead was too attractive, and the other reason was that Jiang Yu was Luo Yu's woman. Conquering a woman who belongs to another powerful man in bed is a very fulfilling thing for Wenhao. Just because you are X-sex's woman, I want to conquer you. All right, this was no longer a novelty. And as the male lead of a world, Luo Yu's way of attracting hatred is really numbing. But now, Luo Yu has broken up with Jiang Yu, and Su-won estimates that Wenhao may not be as obsessed with Jiang Yu as in the original plot. Looks will eventually grow old, and the body will gradually decay. Two people who truly love each other, in fact, have always been in love with each other's souls. General Su looked at his wife tenderly and was about to ask for praise when he saw Su-won curling her lips and seriously replied, "You are right, you will only love my soul in the future." Su-rue, wife, this script is wrong. Chapter 153. After Christmas, it was New Year's Day, and then it was the most important day of Fengheng's semester, the final exam. This time's exam was not difficult for Su-won, so she easily got into the top 3 of the class and successfully staged a last-place counterattack in front of everyone. This made the whole class's little friends dumbfounded. The homeroom teacher, Wenhao, even specially looked for Su-won to talk to him in his office. Su-won really didn't have a good impression of this beast in human clothing, so she just hurriedly responded with a few words and escaped from the office. As soon as she went out, Su-won saw Luo Yu waiting against the wall on the side of the corridor. "Are you okay?" Luo Yu looked at Su-won with some worry. "What can happen to me?" Su-won met Luo Yu's gaze and asked with some surprise. "Nothing." Luo Yu turned his gaze. At the ball that day, others didn't know who Wenhao left with, but Luo Yu knew. He recognized it was Jiang Yu at a glance, and then Jiang Yu moved out of the Su family and lived with Wenhao. Although it was very secretive, in D-City, there was no secret at all for Luo family. Luo Yu was surprised that Jiang Yu chose to be with Wenhao, and he also felt discouraged. Now Jiang Yu no longer had the feeling that could make Luo Yu's heart move, and recently, Jiang Yu and Ouyang Luo were very close, which made Luo Yu a little concerned. He didn't know what Jiang Yu was thinking. Today, he accidentally saw Wenhao enter the office with Su-won, and Luo Yu followed them. He always felt that Wenhao had bad intentions. "It's all school, I should go." Seeing that Luo Yu was stunned there and didn't speak, Su-won couldn't help but say while leaving, I'll send you. Uncle Lu will pick me up. Since Jiang Yu left the Su family, Uncle Lu has become Su Wan's full-time driver. My car is downstairs. I'll take you to the school gate. Luo Yu smiled, and his face was so sincere that people couldn't bear to refuse. Okay. Su Wan nodded, this ex-boyfriend. Now it seems that he is not so annoying. The two people talked in a low voice as they walked, completely unaware that a slender figure had been following them, quietly holding a mobile phone and constantly taking photos. Dee. As soon as Su Wan got into Luo Yu's car, she received a message on her mobile phone. Seeing the content, Su Wan's face turned cold and her eyes swept over the rearview mirror of the car. What's wrong? Feeling that Su Wan's expression had changed, Luo Yu couldn't help but look at her and ask. It's nothing. Su Wan smiled and looked down at her mobile phone. Looking at it, she suddenly turned to look at Luo Yu's face and said with a chuckle, Luo Yu, I saw you in the auditorium on the night of the carnival, but you seemed to be holding a girl at the time. I didn't dare to disturb you. Ball? Girl. Luo Yu's hand holding the steering wheel tightened slightly. You saw it? That. Suddenly, Luo Yu didn't know what to say. The girl in the mask gave him a particularly familiar feeling, but he just couldn't guess who she was. That day, she just accidentally fell into his arms. The two people only said one sentence, and when they separated, the girl suddenly turned around and hugged him and kissed his lips. This was the first time Luo Yu had been kissed by someone, but the girl's kiss was particularly gentle, with a deep affection kiss, which made Luo Yu's heart soften. Unfortunately, she quickly disappeared into the crowd. Later, Luo Yu looked all over the venue and never saw the familiar figure again. Who is she? Is it Cinderella? I don't know that girl, but I think she is very familiar. Luo Yu smiled with some loss. She is like Cinderella in the fairy tale. When the magic disappeared, her whole person disappeared from the ball, and I can no longer find her figure. She is not Cinderella. She is Cinderella's sister. Creak, hearing Su Wan's words, Luo Yu slammed on the brakes. Do you know who she is? Oh. Su Wan blinked a little slyly. Maybe it's me. Luo Yu's eyes flashed. Don't joke. It's not you. I know. The feeling she gives me. Anyway, it's not you. Well, it's not me, but I really know who she is. If you want to see her, I can help. Really? Facing Su Wan's smiling face, Luo Yu's expression looked particularly excited. Su Wan, are you really willing to help me? It depends on your performance. Su Wan subconsciously glanced at the rearview mirror again. Drive quickly. What are you in a hurry for? Good food is not afraid of late. Top student Luo. After breaking up with Luo Yu, Su Wan did not go directly back to Su's house. She told Uncle Lu to drive the car to a coffee shop not far from the school. She found a quiet seat and directly opened her mobile phone to send a message. Not long after, a familiar figure walked into the coffee shop. Seeing Su Wan's figure, the person quickly walked to her table and slowly sat opposite Su Wan. You're here? Su Wan looked at Su Nua, who was a little out of breath and couldn't help but curve her lips. I ordered a cup of Blue Mountain for you. Luo Yu likes it. You should like it too, right? Su Nua's face was embarrassed. Although there were thick glasses covering it, Su Wan still saw the embarrassment in Su Nua's eyes. Today's matter. Su Wan thought about it and was about to change the topic. Su Nua on the side immediately waved her hands nervously. I didn't follow you. I really didn't follow you. Oh. Su Wan looked at Su Nua's nervous face and couldn't help but think of the day when she entered the mission. The first person she saw was also Su Nua. Her sense of existence in the class was very low, but in fact, Su Nua was a very beautiful girl. She was just not good at dressing up and not good at expressing herself. The text message that Su Wan just received in Luo Yu's car was sent to her by Su Nua, and the content of the text message was about Jiang Yu. During this period, Jiang Yu has been quiet a lot, seeing that after the exam, it will be a holiday for the new year. Su Wan didn't care too much about Jiang Yu's existence. She didn't expect that she had been deliberately thinking about exposing herself. Being a female lead like this is really hard. I know you accidentally found out that Jiang Yu was following me. Su Nua, thank you. Su Wan's words made Su Nua, who had been nervous, finally feel at ease. After impulsively kissing Luo Yu at the dance that day, Su Nua was dumbfounded. Okay? She felt that she had no face to see people, but fortunately, no one knew that she did it. Therefore, Su Nua decided to play dead to the end. She couldn't let Luo Yu find out that she was the guy who did the bad thing. So during this time, Su Nua had been avoiding Luo Yu, and when she saw Luo Yu and Su Wan together after school today, she reflexively hid to the side. As a result, Su Nua accidentally discovered that Jiang Yu was secretly following behind the two people. Su Nua felt that Jiang Yu's eyes staring at the two people were a little scary. She thought about it, and finally sent a message to Su Wan. I think Jiang Yu has become very strange recently. Su Nua deliberated for a moment and looked up at Su Wan seriously. Su Wan, you have to be careful. She is so skilled. In case she wants to harm you. Don't worry, I have a sense of propriety. In fact, Su Wan also understood Jiang Yu's thoughts a little bit. She deliberately followed her and Luo Yu in order to grasp the evidence of her cheating and then show it to Brother Xiao. Since she is so thoughtful, she will definitely fulfill her wish. The winter vacation began, and Su Wan was finally liberated. At this time, the International Online Games Summit was about to be held in M country. Su Rue wanted to take Su Wan to participate, but Su Wan let Su Rue leave with the team alone. After sending Su Rue away at the airport, Su Wan immediately made an appointment with Luo Yu to meet at a Western restaurant in the city center. If you want to know who the girl at the dance is, then you have to do me a favor. Su Wan went straight to the point and put forward her conditions to Luo Yu. Hearing her words, Luo Yu's eyes condensed. Why do I feel like I've boarded a pirate ship? What do you want me to do for you? Do you know the Whisper Club under the name of the Ouyang family? Whisper Club, a very high-end private club in the suburbs of D-City. It is the property of Ouyang Luo's father. It is the most famous and luxurious place to spend money in D-City. I know, Whisper. Are you and Xiaoqi interested in that place? At first, Luo Yu was a little concerned about Su Wan and Xiaoqi being together. At that time, he also suspected that Su Wan had contact with Xiaoqi before breaking up with him. But later Luo Yu sent someone to investigate and found out that Xiaoqi really came to D-City for the first time. That day at the school gate, he did meet Su Wan for the first time, and the person who had a deep relationship with Xiaoqi before that was Jiang Yu. A lot of things have happened recently, and Luo Yu's state of mind is slowly growing. The Luo family has always been well informed, and now Luo Yu has long known that Xiaoqi is not the same as before. The poor boy that day is now the hottest genius star in the country. Just Whisper, how to say it. As long as you have money and power, you can book your own private room in Whisper. In that private room, you can choose to do whatever you want with your lover unscrupulously. Uniforms, whips, handcuffs, candles, everything is there. Of course, if you are alone, you can also spend money to enjoy the stars, services specially provided by Whisper. In a private place, take off the disguise and have an unscrupulous sex. Safe, exciting, and will never be discovered by others. Luxurious rooms, complete props, and absolute security and confidentiality. This is the most attractive part of Whisper. Hearing Su Wan ask about Whisper, Luo Yu's first thought was full and warm thoughts. Are Xiaoqi and Su Wan going to Whisper to indulge? As a result, when she heard Luo Yu's rhetorical question, Su Wan just smiled mysteriously. It's not Xiaoqi who is going to Whisper, it's you, Luo Yu. Chapter 154. Whisper Club. This high-class clubhouse, which was famous far and wide in D-City, was located next to a beautiful forest park in the suburbs. Jiang Yu came to the door of Whisper Club and looked at the door of the club that seemed very low-key in the cold night. She hesitated and finally got out of the car quickly, then took out the VIP card that Ouyang Luo gave her and directly entered the door unimpeded. As soon as you enter the door, the splendor in front of you will make you feel like you have come to another world. In the resplendent and luxurious hall, countless beautiful women in bikinis smiled and passed by with high-grade red wine. They were just the most ordinary waiters in Whisper Club, but each of them had a body comparable to that of a famous model. Jiang Yu was naturally a little reserved when she saw this scene for the first time. She immediately called Ouyang Luo. Not long after, young Master Ouyang, who was dressed extremely showily, personally went downstairs and pulled Jiang Yu to the 4th floor of the club. In Whisper Club, from the 3rd floor onwards, It was a private room belonging to VIP guests. Ouyang Luo took Jiang Yu into 4007. As soon as she entered the door, Jiang Yu's face changed. "Hello, sister-in-law." The spacious and elegant room was full of young people of 17 or 18 years old. Most of these people were Feng Heng students and also young Master Ouyang's younger brother. When they saw Jiang Yu enter the door, everyone immediately shouted in unison, "Ouyang Luo, this..." Jiang Yu didn't know in advance that Ouyang Luo would call so many people over. After all, peeping on others was not a noble thing. Jiang Yu also repeatedly convinced herself that it was for the good of Brother Xiao, so she would do this kind of thing. However, how could Ouyang Luo think so? Ever since he learned from Jiang Yu that Luo Yu was going to whisper to Su Wan about having an affair, Ouyang Luo was inexplicably excited. He finally caught the opportunity to embarrass Su Wan. Wouldn't it be a pity if he didn't call some of his friends to come and watch such a good opportunity? So after confirming that Luo Yu had settled on 4008, Ouyang Luo immediately ordered people to clean up 4007 and called his friends to come and watch the show together. Xiao Yu, don't take their words to heart. Seeing that Jiang Yu seemed to be frightened by the word sister-in-law, Ouyang Luo immediately comforted her in a low voice. "Come, you sit here. I have already arranged this private room." Ouyang Luo picked up the remote control and turned on the giant LED display on the wall of the room. In every private room of Whisper, there would be a big screen like this. Under normal circumstances, this big screen would broadcast the scene in your own room at the same time. Well, the meaning of this could only be understood, but not expressed in words. However, in Ouyang Luo's room, when he turned on the big screen, it showed another empty private room. That's right, their screen was connected to 4008's video feed next door. Ouyang Luo had used his power as the young master to order someone to secretly transfer the feed. At this time, Jiang Yu's gaze also fell on the screen, and she involuntarily followed Ouyang Luo's footsteps to the big sofa in the middle of the room and sat down. At this time, there was no one in 4008. Jiang Yu looked at the time, and there were still 5 minutes to 8 p.m. She had been monitoring and tracking Su Wan during this time. Seeing that Brother Xiao went abroad, Su Wan couldn't wait to contact Luo Yu, which made Jiang Yu very angry. In order to grasp the evidence of Su Wan's infidelity as soon as possible, she directly spent money to find someone to install a bug on Su Wan's mobile phone. Because of this, she was able to eavesdrop on Luo Yu's call to meet Su Wan at Whisper 4008 at 8 p.m. tonight. At first, Jiang Yu didn't know where Whisper was. Later, she asked Ouyang Luo and learned that this place turned out to be a place for that kind of thing, which made Jiang Yu start to despise Su Wan. What a shameless woman. Brother Xiao just went abroad, and she couldn't wait to get together with her adulterer. This time, I must make her look good. Click. At 8 o'clock, Luo Yu's figure appeared on time in room 4008. Jiang Yu's eyes were fixed on Luo Yu on the screen, and the other people who were called by Ouyang Luo didn't know what kind of drama they were going to watch at first. Now that Luo Yu's figure appeared on the screen, everyone couldn't help but exclaim. Fortunately, the soundproofing effect of this room was very strong, so they didn't have to worry about being heard by Luo Yu. Former lovers, now meeting again through the video. Jiang Yu's mood was a little mixed. Perhaps Luo Yu was also deceived by Su Wan? As Jiang Yu was thinking, she saw that Luo Yu had taken off his coat and was sitting on the sofa in room 4008. There was also a big screen opposite his sofa. Luo Yu seemed to look at the big screen curiously and then took out his mobile phone and started to make a call. "Su Wan, I'm here. Where are you?" In room 4007, when they heard Luo Yu say Su Wan's name, all the teenagers in the room were excited. "Your mother? Are they going to watch top student Luo and school bell Su Pa? So excited. Well, if top student Luo finds out, will he be silenced? Who cares so much? Just when a group of people couldn't help but have their faces rippling with YY, Luo Yu continued to make phone calls. Not knowing what Su Wan said on the phone, Luo Yu seemed to frown slightly. He held the phone in one hand and fumbled on the sofa with the other hand. After a while, he found a small remote control. "I found it. Do you want to turn it on?" While speaking, Luo Yu pressed the on key of the remote control without thinking, and then a scene that made him stunned immediately appeared on the whole big screen. In the picture were two entangled bodies, Is it cool? The man panted heavily as he continued to exercise and spew obscenities. The woman beneath him could only pant and breathe comfortably. Her exquisite and beautiful face was filled with seductive charm. Translator, Hinyi Translations Editor. Hinyi Translations, yes. This is the HD version of when Qinsho and Jiang Yu's little angel's bed exercise. Luo Yu. What did I see? Please wash my eyes when Luo Yu was stunned. Room 4007 next door also watched this scene at close range. All the men. Is there a nosebleed? Ouyang Luo was also dumbfounded. He opened his mouth and stared dumbfoundedly at the kind and pure person in his mind who was like a slut under when Wenhao's body, panting, and repeatedly. This is not true, not true. A certain teenager seemed to hear the sound of his glass heart being crushed into pieces. Don't look, don't look. Jiang Yu, who finally reacted, frantically grabbed the remote control in Ouyang Luo's hand. But the small remote control seemed to have suddenly failed. No matter how she pressed it, it couldn't be turned off. Jiang Yu excitedly ran to the screen and wanted to cover the scene inside with her body, but how could her slender body be covered? Moreover, seeing her chest moving up and down excitedly in front of the screen, most of the teenagers in the room subconsciously swallowed their saliva. Your mother? It's really the same as in the video. It looks so big, get out. In the end, Ouyang Luo roared angrily, and everyone reluctantly left. At this time, only Ouyang Luo and Jiang Yu were left in the room, and the voice that made people blush and their heartbeat kept ringing in his ears. Jiang Yu. Ouyang Luo bent down and looked at Jiang Yu, who was squatting on the ground and crying weakly. Look at me. As soon as he raised his hand, he grabbed Jiang Yu's hair and did not force her to look at him. Tell me why? Why did you betray me? Obviously, in the world of a certain Chinibyu, since Jiang Yu and Luo Yu broke up, she has been very close to him. Jiang Yu did not refuse his advances, and even several times Ouyang Luo couldn't help hugging Jiang Yu and holding her little hand. Jiang Yu did not refuse these. Therefore, Ouyang Luo always thought that he was already Jiang Yu's little angel's boyfriend. But just now, in front of his own group of younger brothers, he was put on an upgraded version of the universe's invincible green hat. Ouyang Luo, you. Seeing Ouyang Luo's eyes gradually become cold and strange, Jiang Yu's heart panicked and couldn't help but struggle. Is Teacher Wen very brave? Can he satisfy you that I can't? Ouyang Luo saw Jiang Yu struggling in front of him, and he couldn't help but sink his face. He leaned down and was about to kiss Jiang Yu's face. At this time, Jiang Yu, who was panicking, finally played the advantage of her martial arts master. With a set of combined punches, she knocked Ouyang Luo to the ground. Ouyang Luo fell to the ground, raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his lips, endured the pain in his body and chest, and looked at Jiang Yu coldly. Do you think I want to touch you? Why are you pretending to be a chaste woman in front of me? When Wenhao is a frequent visitor of Whisper, the number of women he has slept with is not less than 1,000. Do you think I, Ouyang Luo, will care about his used shoes? Standing up shakily, Ouyang Luo gave Jiang Yu a somewhat hideous smile. In the future, don't let me see you again in Fenghong otherwise. Ouyang Luo's words were not finished, but the meaning of his words was already very obvious. Bang! Fiercely kicking open the door of 4007, Ouyang Luo just saw Luo Yu, who just came out of 4008 when he went out. The two men looked at each other and saw Ouyang Luo's somewhat embarrassed appearance. Luo Yu lowered his eyes and turned away without saying a word. Needless to say, he probably guessed what happened to Ouyang Luo. Chapter 155. After Jiang Yu came out of the Whisper, she almost rushed back to the Su family to find Su Wan to settle accounts. But the servant of the Su family told her that Su Wan had already flown abroad. Jiang Yu, who finally realized that she had been schemed against by Su Wan from beginning to end, fell to the ground in a daze. She felt that she was finished, and her life was finished. Being seen by so many people about her and Wenhao, and at the same time being warned and threatened by Ouyang Luo, she knew that she could not stay in Fenghong anymore. Even in the entire D-City, she had become a joke. The next day, the video of Jiang Yu and Wenhao had begun to circulate widely in the circle of D-City, and even Su Haicheng got a copy. For this kind of immoral thing, as a father, he felt ashamed, and at the same time, he was naturally heartbroken. When Suwon accompanied Su Rue to return triumphantly abroad, the matter of Jiang Yu and Wen Wenhao was still circulating in the upper-class circle of the entire D-city. So what if she's a real daughter? She still did some shameful things. The so-called people's words are fearful. Jiang Yu, who came from a mountain village, saw the face of the so-called upper-class people for the first time. When they hold you up, you will sit on the clouds, but when they step on you, you will go deep into the mud and can't defend yourself at all. At this time, Jiang Yu understood the meaning of home. With Wen Shu accompanying her day and night, Jiang Yu's mood finally stabilized, and the return of Su Wan and Su Rue became the fuse of Jiang Yu's rampage. Su Wan, it's you. You did it all. Why do you want to harm me like this? How can you be so vicious? After many days, Jiang Yu's face was haggard and her eyes were in a trance. At the moment when she saw Su Wan enter the door, Jiang Yu's eyes suddenly flashed with coldness. She quickly rushed towards Su Wan and raised her hand to slap Su Wan. No one in the hall had time to stop Jiang Yu, but there was a person behind Su Wan who was faster than Jiang Yu. Pa! A loud slap hit Jiang Yu's face. She froze in place and stared at the man in front of her. Shao! Jiang Yu, everything is your own fault. Su Rue interrupted Jiang Yu's words. He and Su Wan really didn't intend to release that video, but Jiang Yu has been following Su Wan relentlessly and even installed a bug in her mobile phone, which has touched Su Wan's bottom line. As the saying goes, if you don't do it, you won't die. Jiang Yu will die. Jiang Yu didn't do it, didn't kill yourself. Su Wan took a step forward and looked at the wronged and stubborn Jiang Yu in front of her. Did I tell you to go to bed with Wen Wenhao? Did I force you and Ouying Luo? Or did I force you to follow me and Luo Wan? Since you like to peep at other people's privacy so much, I'll let you have a good time this time. I'll let everyone in the city see how beautiful and alluring you are. You don't have to thank me. Who asked you to be my good sister? Wan I wan you, Su you, I you, wan I wan, I you, I wan I. Su Wan you. Jiang Yu was stimulated by Su Wan's words. She was so excited that she wanted to make a move again, but the corner of her eyes caught Su Rue's indifferent eyes. Jiang Yu's movements slowed down again. Brother Shao, can you turn a blind eye to what she did? I followed her, but I was not as vicious as her to release other people's private videos. Oh, hearing that Jiang Yu still felt that she was not wrong and everything was Su Wan's fault, General Su could only laugh. I have heard an old saying that only state officials are allowed to set fires, but ordinary people are not allowed to light lamps. Jiang Yu, since you can follow and eavesdrop on Su Wan, why can't Su Wan fight back? And the so-called video, if you didn't do it yourself, can she still wrongly accuse you? If you want, you can also release the video. Oh yes, I almost forgot. My wife is not like some people who will casually go to bed with other men. If you want this video, you have to wait until we get married to disturb the bridal chamber. Of course, I will not give you this opportunity. With that, Su Rue impatiently raised his hand and pushed Jiang Yu aside. He turned his head and looked at Su Wan tenderly. Wife, ignore her. She is sick in the head. Are you tired after sitting on the plane for so long? I will help you prepare the bathwater. Let's take a good bath. Under Jiang Yu's gaze that wanted to eat people, General Su still pulled his wife upstairs with a gentle face and went to warm her up. Looking at the backs of the two people leaving, Jiang Yu subconsciously gritted her teeth, and her pretty face was involuntarily distorted. Xiaoyu, your sister is at fault in this matter, but you are also. Hey, such a big thing happened in the family. Your mother and I are also responsible. Su Haicheng, who had been silent, couldn't bear to see his good family break up like this. He couldn't help but whisper a few words of comfort. Hearing his words, Jiang Yu just sneered in her heart. Su family? When Su Wan didn't come back, she still felt that her parents were her safe haven, but now Su Wan is back, and the culprit who harmed her is in front of her, but Su Haicheng and his wife are indifferent to Su Wan's crime. This kind of parents was really disappointing. I'm tired. I'll go upstairs first. Jiang Yu loosened her clenched fists, turned and slowly walked upstairs. After returning to her room, Jiang Yu's eyes flashed with madness. She took out her mobile phone and quickly dialed Wen Wenhao's number. What's the matter? Since that incident was exposed, Wen Wenhao's life in Fenghong has not been easy. Who let Fenghong be the territory of the Ouyang family? Although the Wen family is also a big family, the Wen family is not a local family. Distant water cannot quench immediate thirst. Fortunately, Wen Wenhao is very good at conducting himself and doing things. During this period, he has no longer contacted Jiang Yu, and also personally went to the Ouyang family to visit Ouyang Luo's grandfather. There was no conflict of interest between the two sides. It was just some trivial matters of love affairs. Wen Wenhao's tone was very cold when he suddenly received a call from Jiang Yu today. He has had countless women over the years. Although Jiang Yu is one of the best, and her flexible body does make him exceptionally obsessed, she has now successfully offended the two largest local families, the Ouyang family and the Luo family. Under such circumstances, as long as Wen Wenhao still has a little bit of IQ, he should completely draw a line with Jiang Yu. On the other end of the phone, Jiang Yu also felt Wen Wenhao's indifference, but she didn't care anymore. She didn't really like Wen Wenhao. I have something I want to ask you for help with. I'm afraid I can't help you. Wen Wenhao refused very simply, and he didn't even want to know what Jiang Yu wanted him to do for her. What do you think of Su Wan's figure? Jiang Yu suddenly tempted in a low voice on the phone. My sister is liked by a lot of people. Su Wan? Wen Wenhao did not hang up the phone immediately, and Su Wan's beautiful but excessively indifferent face immediately appeared in his mind. Those who can be selected as the school flower are naturally beautiful and aloof. For such a beauty, Wen Wenhao generally has no resistance. If you like it, I will help you arrange it. Jiang Yu's tone was very low and very firm. Why? Wen Wenhao, who was already somewhat moved, couldn't help but ask, just because of the video, are you going to retaliate against her? She did it first. I will do it back. She wants to ruin my reputation. I will also ruin her reputation. Feeling the fierceness in Jiang Yu's tone, Wen Wenhao suddenly shivered. Sure enough, a woman's heart is the most poisonous. The most dangerous thing in this world is a woman. However, in front of a beauty, the opportunity to kiss the school flower is in front of him. How can Wen Wenhao let it go? Well, for the sake of our past relationship, I will help you get revenge. Chapter 156. The Spring Festival was supposed to be a day of family reunion and joy, but the Su family had such a big incident. Even during the Spring Festival, there was not much joy in the villa. Jiang Yu, who had been locked in the room, suddenly cried and apologized to Wen Shu when the New Year's bell rang at midnight, and then said with tears that she must let go of the past and start a new life in the future. At the same time, she also hoped that she and her younger sister could abandon their past grievances and be a pair of loving sisters. If it was the former Jiang Yu, Su Wan would reluctantly believe that her words were somewhat sincere. As for now, who would believe that she wanted to bury the hatchet with herself? However, looking at the female lead's hard-working performance, and her eyes were swollen from crying, Su Wan could only reluctantly pretend that she didn't notice her full of malice. After the Spring Festival, school would start soon. Su Wan had nothing to prepare, and because Lingshan was already preparing to be fully launched, Su Wan's pace of life had become very fast. Because he often had to work overtime, Su Wan's figure was rarely seen in the Su family. In the blink of an eye, it was the Lantern Festival. Jiang Yu took the initiative to ask Su Wan out for the first time after the new year. Xiao Wan, tonight, Chaos in the Imperial Capital will premiere at 10 o'clock. Brother Xiao is not here. Let's go to the premiere together. Chaos in the Imperial Capital is the movie in which Xiao Yuni participated. The so-called fate, some can be changed, but some seem to be destined. Without Su Wan's reminder and obstruction, Xiao Yuni finally participated in the movie, and like the original plot that Su Wan knew, he played the third male lead, the sixth prince. Su Wan was actually very interested in this movie. Seeing Jiang Yu looking at herself expectantly, Su Wan couldn't help but smile meaningfully. Okay, I was going to support Yuni today. Seeing that Su Wan agreed so easily, Jiang Yu's eyes flashed with joy. Okay, then let's do it. After leaving Su Wan's room, Jiang Yu proudly raised her lips and sent a message to Wen Wenhao again. At 10 o'clock tonight, wait for my news. At 6 o'clock in the evening, after dinner, Jiang Yu dressed herself up and sat on the sofa, staring absent-mindedly at the European-style clock on the wall. Thinking that she could immediately ruin Su Wan's reputation, Jiang Yu felt that all the cells in her body were boiling. Unfortunately, at this time, she felt that time was passing too slowly. DD. A text message suddenly popped up on Jiang Yu's mobile phone page. At first, Jiang Yu just glanced at it casually. During the festival, the general text messages were blessings, and it was the promotional information of the business. When Jiang Yu saw Wen Wenhao's name on it, she was stunned for a moment and immediately walked to the bathroom on the first floor while everyone was not paying attention. Wen Wenhao's text message was very short. He said that he had an urgent matter to talk to Jiang Yu first. He also attached an address. Jiang Yu knew that it was the address of Wen Wenhao's private villa. She had been there twice before. Seeing that his revenge plan was about to be realized, could it be that Wen Wenhao was going to go back on his word? Or is he planning to get some benefits from me first? Jiang Yu's eyes flickered. She knew that Wen Wenhao's villa was not too far from the Su family. If she goes now, she should be able to return before 9 o'clock. If Wen Wenhao had any ill intentions, Jiang Yu clenched her fists. She is no longer her former self, and she will never be bullied again. Seeing Jiang Yu rushing out of the door, Su Wan didn't care. She continued to watch TV and text Su Rue. General Su, did the crazy woman go out? Su Wan, what did you do again? General Su, secret, Su Wan, do you want to watch a movie together tonight? General Su, Uni gave me 2 VIP tickets. I will wait for you at 10 o'clock. Su Wan, okay. After chatting with Su Rue, Su Wan remembered the 2 movie tickets that Jiang Yu gave her during the day. She couldn't help but send a message to Luo Yu. Do you want to watch Chaos in the Imperial Capital? Go to the cinema on the 5th floor of Xintiandi at 10 o'clock tonight. Cinderella's sister has the tickets in her hands. After sending the message, Su Wan called Su Nua again and asked her to meet at the entrance of the cinema at 9:40 p.m. After doing all this, Su Wan comfortably stretched her waist. In fact, the fate between people is really strange. Just like Su Nua has been silently in love with Luo Yu. And Luo Yu can't forget the sister of Cinderella at the ball. Are they really in love with each other? Unrequited love is like a dream that you can't wake up from. You would rather be intoxicated in it and don't know what time it is. But one day, this dream is forcibly interrupted. When you return from the dream to reality, when you really touch the person you have been secretly in love with for a long time, you approach him and understand him, will he still be the same as in your dream? What makes you fall in love at first sight is always the appearance. And what makes you never forget is always the feeling of that moment. Su Wan has no intention to help them. She can only let Su Nua and Luo Yu not be missed by each other. As for whether they are suitable or not, it is also their feelings and their lives. Su Wan has never been so concerned about other people's affairs. This time, she just returned the favor she owed Su Nua and Luo Yu. When Su Wan was done with everything, Jiang Yu, who hurried out, had already taken a car to the door of Wen Wenhao's house. Looking at the brightly lit villa hall, Jiang Yu took a deep breath, then walked to the door and rang the doorbell. No one responded in the villa. Jiang Yu waited for a while and couldn't help but call Wen Wenhao's phone, but no one answered his phone. Jiang Yu hesitated and slammed the door of the villa. As a result, the door of the villa was slammed open by her at this time. The door is not locked? In such a strange situation, normal people should hesitate whether to call the police or simply turn around and leave, right? But our family's Jiang Yu, as a female lead, how could she turn around and leave? The first rule of the female lead: if there are difficulties, you must go up. If there are no difficulties, you must create difficulties and go up unswervingly. Jiang Yu only hesitated for a second and strode into the villa. The lights in the villa were on, but the living room was empty. From the second floor of the villa, there was a faint smell of blood. Jiang Yu's face changed, and she quickly went upstairs. The smell of blood came from a room on the second floor, and Jiang Yu recognized that the room was Wen Wenhao's bedroom. Did something happen to him? Jiang Yu anxiously pushed open the door and rushed in without any vigilance. Just as she rushed in, suddenly someone reached out from behind and covered her mouth and nose, accompanied by a special smell. Jiang Yu only felt that her eyes were blurred. Before losing consciousness, she struggled to see when Wenhou's distorted face behind her. At 10 o'clock in the evening, the movie Chaos in the Imperial Capital was released on time. The cinema was dark and full of people who came to watch the premiere. Suwon and Su Rue sat in the comfortable VIP lounge and watched Xiao Yunyi's famous work carefully. When the movie ended and came out of the screening hall, Suwon found that there were really many female audiences who cried with red eyes. Hey, isn't that Luoyu? When Su Rue came out, he saw his acquaintance in the crowd at a glance. Is it Su Nua who is with him? Su Rue was not familiar with Su Nua, but Suwon once told him about Su Nua and Luoyu. So Su Rue felt that the person around Luoyu must be Su Nua. At this time, Su Nua also seemed to be moved by the plot of the movie. He took off his glasses and turned to secretly wipe his tears. Well, I asked them to come. Jiang Yu's 2 tickets should not be wasted. Hearing Su Rue's question, Suwon also directly told him about the 2 people she invited to watch the movie. She believed that if Luoyu really couldn't forget Cinderella's sister, he would definitely find that familiar figure in the crowd. Hearing Suwon's words, Su Rue smiled and put his arm around her shoulder. When did my wife become a matchmaker? Su Xiaowon, have you forgotten that you are a destroyer and have the task of tearing apart the CP? Glancing at Su Rue's teasing eyes, Suwon looked at Su Nua and Luoyu in the crowd with a slightly meaningful look. Some people are only suitable to stay in the heart, and some people are only suitable to be remembered. Sometimes people who seem to be compatible in all aspects may not necessarily be able to last forever. In fact, I am not optimistic about them. Few people in this world will only fall in love with one person in their life. When you want to love, don't hesitate to love with all your might. In the end, even if you are not suitable, even if you have to separate, at least you have loved without regrets. Suwon has loved, hated, deeply despaired, and confused. Fortunately, she met Su Rue. If you also meet such a person, hesitation is bound to lose the other party. Chapter 157. In the dimly lit basement, the smell of blood was everywhere. Jiang Yu gradually regained consciousness. She trembled and opened her eyes, but what came into view was Wenhao's blood-red eyes. Teacher 1. Wenhao, what are you doing? Jiang Yu subconsciously struggled. At this time, she realized that her whole body was tied to a chair with a rope. Because she struggled a little fiercely, the whole chair fell to the ground, and her head also came into close contact with the ground. The sticky liquid occupied the side of Jiang Yu's face. The red liquid was cold and sticky. This is blood. Jiang Yu screamed, and her whole face became pale. What are you panicking for? When Wenhao's voice was low and hoarse, this is all my blood. When Wenhao said while squatting down in a weird motion, pinching Jiang Yu's chin with his fingers, forcing her to look at him. At this time, Jiang Yu discovered that although Wenhao's upper body was still wearing a clean white shirt, his lower body had already been dyed red with blood. Jiang Yu's eyes widened abruptly, and her pale lips were trembling. It's all for you. When Wenhao's voice strangely rose, didn't you want to plot against Suwon? The knockout drug I gave you just now was what you prepared for Suwon, and when Wenhao's fingers unconsciously pinched Jiang Yu's chin, and these little props in the basement, I think you will like them. You will definitely like them. While speaking, when Wenhao suddenly stood up, picked up a whip on the ground and slammed it on Jiang Yu's face. The huge whipping force was accompanied by sharp stinging pain, making Jiang Yu immediately cry out in pain, and her white and tender face was also whipped with a red blood stain at this moment. Slut! Slut! It's all because of you. Everything is ruined. When Wenhao madly vented the despair and fear in his heart while whipping Jiang Yu. Su family villa. It was already midnight when Suwon and Su Rue returned home. In the dark room, Su Rue quietly held Suwon in his arms. Wife, let's leave this world quickly. Su Rue didn't like this world. It was full of idiots and lunatics, and he could only look but not eat. He was not happy at all. Suwon rubbed against Su Rue's arms. Su Rue, did you get rid of Jiang Yu? Although she didn't know why Jiang Yu went out in a hurry, it was obvious that everything was done by Su Rue. Isn't there a saying that goes, the evils we bring upon ourselves are the hardest to bear? People like her, and when Wenhao don't need anyone else to deal with them. They've dug their own graves. Yes, General Su didn't do anything. He just castrated Wenhao and sealed his acupoints so that he wouldn't feel any pain for 4 hours. This beast actually dared to covet their family's Xiaowan. He's simply tired of living. Jiang Yu knew that he was monitoring Su Wan's phone, but she didn't know that her phone had already been monitored by Su Rui. Compared to General Su's ruthlessness, female lead Darren, you're still too inexperienced. Su Rui doesn't have to do it himself. Wenhao, who has been stimulated to madness by him, will definitely entertain Jiang Yu well. And when 4 hours had passed, Su Rui's lips curled into a mocking arc. Wenhao, Jiang Yu, none of them can escape. Jiang Yu did not return overnight. The next day, the criminal police captain of City D came to the Su family early in the morning. It turned out that when Wenhao was found dead in the basement of his home in the early morning, the body was found by the hourly servant who came to his home to clean early in the morning. The police found blood, skin tissue, and hair belonging to another person at the scene of the crime. Jiang Yu's figure was also found in the surveillance video of the villa, so the police initially suspected that Jiang Yu was the murderer of Wenhao. Hearing this news, Wen Shu fainted immediately. With the disappearance of Jiang Yu and the tragic death of Wenhao, the ambiguous relationship between the two people and the hot video were once again mentioned by everyone. There were even well-informed people who said that the police also found several phone recordings in Wenhao's home, which were all conversations about how he and Jiang Yu planned to frame Su Wan. The preliminary judgment was that Wenhao deliberately recorded it, intending to threaten Jiang Yu in the future. Perhaps the two people turned against each other because of this? Because she couldn't stand the successive blows. Wen Shu's health was getting worse and worse. She was sometimes in a coma and sometimes awake. Every time she woke up, she would cry and call her daughter's name. And the more Su Haiqing felt sad for his disappointing daughter. On many sleepless nights, Su Haiqing couldn't help but think, if they didn't recognize Jiang Yu, then what would be the fate of their family? He, Wen Shu, and Su Wan, the family of 3 would always be the same as before, living a happy life. And Jiang Yu, who has been studying independently since she was a child, could still study, graduate, and even work and live safely even without the Su family. Unfortunately, everything has changed now, because when Shu was too weak, Su Wan applied for a suspension of school after school started and often accompanied her by the hospital bed. Do you feel guilty? Su Rui looked at the unconscious woman on the hospital bed and glanced at Su Wan, who looked a little haggard. Guilty? Su Wan smiled. The reason why wicked people are called wicked is because they never feel guilty. Soft-hearted people can't be mission enforcers. Although Wen Shu's current situation is because of Jiang Yu, and Jiang Yu's matter is inseparable from Su Wan and Su Rui, but Su Wan has always felt that she has a clear conscience. She will not do something like Jiang Yu while thinking that she was forced. She is innocent. She was forced. Others can't help but forgive herself. These are just the thoughts of cowards deceiving themselves. Seeing that Su Wan's eyes were still serious and bright, Su Rui finally felt relieved. He saw that Su Wan had been taking care of Wen Shu day and night for the past few days. He was afraid that her heart would be left with a bad shadow because of this world. Fortunately, Su Wan's heart is still the same as before, and she will never be soft-hearted when she needs to be ruthless. So, when are we leaving? Since Jiang Yu killed Wenhao and was wanted, Su Rui was reminded that the mission failed, which also means that Su Wan's mission was successful. According to Su Rui's idea, he will give all the shares of his company to the Su family and then propose to Su Wan, so that he can withdraw from this world without regret. After all, at Su Wan's age in this world, she can only do this. Marriage? That would be many years in the future. In this world, after meeting Jiang Yu, that crazy woman, General Su has stayed here long enough. He simply doesn't want to stay here for another minute, okay? However, Su Wan doesn't seem to want to withdraw from this world immediately. Hearing Su Rui's question, she stood up and tucked Wen Shu in the hospital bed, then turned her head and looked at Su Rui with a smile. Didn't I just say it? As for me, I'm an evil man. With that said, the smile on Su Wan's face became a little mysterious. Su Rui, do you know where Jiang Yu is? Jiang Yu? Su Rui frowned. That woman can hide. The police haven't caught her yet. Accompany me to a place tomorrow. Let's see what Jiang Yu is doing. Chapter 158. The cold night of early spring was still cold to the bone. In the old district of the north of City D, it was already dark before 8 o'clock. There were very few pedestrians on the street, and the shops on both sides of the street had already closed for the day. The dim yellow street lamps cast long shadows on the road. A skinny shadow took advantage of the darkness to quickly shuttle through the quiet streets. At the corner of the street, a slow private car slowly drove over. Seeing the car, the shadow seemed to be frightened and abruptly rushed into a dead end at the side. There was no light in the alley, daily garbage was piled up on the walls, and near the garbage dump was the temporary residence of 2 stray dogs. Woof woof, woof woof woof. The uninvited guest who suddenly rushed into the alley disturbed the stray dogs in the alley. They couldn't help barking twice, and the figure seemed to be anxious. She quickly raised her legs and kicked a few times in the darkness. Don't bark! Don't bark! The deliberately lowered female voice was hoarse and low. The 2 stray dogs, who were not strong, were kicked and immediately fell to the ground and whimpered. I told you not to bark. Jiang Yu tightened the thin coat on her body. When she landed, she frowned. She seemed to have stepped on something. This is when Jiang Yu's eyes adapted to the darkness in the alley. She looked down at her feet, and her eyes widened. She stepped on a person's arm? In a panic, Jiang Yu subconsciously turned around and ran. When Wenhao's death had left an indelible shadow in her heart. That day, in that dark basement, she was abused by Wenhao, who was in a delirious state, for several hours. Just when she was in despair and thought that she was going to die there, Wenhao suddenly fell to the ground. His face was pale, and his whole body rolled on the ground in pain. Jiang Yu took advantage of Wenhao struggling on the ground to grab a blade on the ground and cut the rope. At that time, she was already injured all over, but in order to survive, she still burst out her greatest potential. Just when she was running away, Wenhao, who was still bleeding under her, suddenly rushed over and hugged her. While the 2 people were entangled, the blade in Jiang Yu's hand pierced into Wenhao's heart. Bright red warm blood sprayed on Jiang Yu's face. At that moment, the world was blood red. She saw Wenhao's eyes widen, and he lost his breath in front of her little by little. He died? Did he kill someone? Murder. Jiang Yu never thought that she would kill people, but she didn't mean it. She didn't mean it. Not me, not me. She dropped the blade in a panic and fled from Wenhao's villa. Jiang Yu knew that she couldn't go home. She withdrew a sum of money from the bank's ATM for the first time, and then went into hiding. Now that she is wanted by the police in D-City, Jiang Yu used her money to rent a dilapidated basement in the old city. She only dared to come out at night to get some fresh air and buy some daily necessities. She did not expect to encounter such a thing in this deserted alley. That person, is he dead? If he is dead, will he be discovered tomorrow? Will the police find her when they come here? For a while, Jiang Yu thought a lot in her heart, and she stopped leaving. No, I can't let such a thing happen. She is innocent. She didn't kill Wenhao. Wenhao wanted to kill her. She did it in self-defense. She doesn't want to go to jail. She doesn't want to be caught. She is innocent. Thinking like this, Jiang Yu gritted her teeth and turned back to the place where she had just stood. She bent down and pulled the arm hard to pull out the suspected dead man. What appeared in front of Jiang Yu was a man with a firm and deep outline. She had to say that this was a very handsome man, and at this time, his body was still warm, and he was still breathing. He was still alive, not dead. Jiang Yu finally breathed a sigh of relief, saw the blood on the man's chest, and looked at the obviously expensive watch on his wrist. Jiang Yu hesitated for a moment. This watch will be worth a lot of money if it is taken to the black market, but taking it without asking is stealing. Although she is wanted, Jiang Yu, who has always felt that she is above board, does not allow herself to be a thief at this time. After hesitating for a moment, Jiang Yu's eyes flashed, and finally she made up her mind. She held the unconscious man on her back and struggled to carry him out of the alley. Since this person was still alive, he had to save him. If he really had a high social status, then he would definitely not mistreat his savior. If he was a person with power and influence, Maybe he could help him overturn the case? With such a complicated mood, Jiang Yu carried the man to her home. The man was seriously injured. In order to save him, Jiang Yu had to find a black market doctor and took out all her remaining money to perform surgery on him. After the surgery, the man was still in a coma, but his face was getting better and better. By the third night, Jiang Yu, who was penniless, was really hungry. She huddled in the dark and damp room and looked at the unconscious man on the small wooden bed. His diamond watch was still shining in the darkness. Jiang Yu swallowed her saliva, and her eyes were a little hesitant. Gulp, her stomach cried out again, and Jiang Yu, who was already lightheaded and weak, finally stood up slowly and walked to the man step by step. Her fingers were stiff and finally touched the expensive watch. I'm really hungry. I'm going to mortgage it so that everyone has something to eat. You have to spend money to change your medicine and eat, right? If you don't speak, I'll take it as you agree. With that said, Jiang Yu quickly pulled off the watch and then hurriedly opened the door and ran out. After she left, two figures appeared quietly. The old basement was filled with a damp smell, and Su Rue couldn't help but frown. Looking at the man who was still unconscious on the small bed, Su Wan couldn't help but smile. Jing Lai, I found you. 1 month later, Xiao Wan, do you remember this place? I remember I fainted around here. Jing Lai drove his Hummer, parked the car on the side of the road, and stared at the old house in front of him. Jing Lai's eyes were a little complicated. His most trusted men betrayed him, and the woman he loved most stabbed him in the back. That was a month ago. He desperately ran away and finally passed out near here. At that time, he knew that he would always be found, and then he would be quietly killed. In this world, people die every day, and the death of a gang boss like him, who is full of evil, is regarded as eliminating evil for the people. Who cares who killed him and where he died? Jing Lai really thought he was dead. So when he opened his eyes and saw the bright crystal lamp and the cold and beautiful girl in front of him, he thought he was in heaven? How can bad people be qualified to go to heaven? You're awake? The girl's voice was as cold as her expression. At that time, Jing Lai reflected for a while before he realized that he did not die. He survived. And the girl in front of him must be his savior. Even if the sun was shining brightly, Su Wan's face still didn't show much warmth. She sat on the front passenger seat and coldly looked at Jing Lai's side profile. Mr. Jing, how many times do you want me to tell you? I didn't save you. I still have to go back and prepare for the engagement ceremony. You pulled me here. What do you want to do? Xiao Wan, I like you. Jing Lai stared at Su Wan's eyes seriously. Don't promise Xiao Qi. What he gave you, I can also give you. Billions, or even trillions. As long as there's a number, I, Jing Lai, can do it. What do I need so much money for? And trillions? Do you think it's ghost money? Su Wan was almost amused by Jing Lai's words. Mr. Jing, I don't think we're very familiar. What do you like about me? Just because you think I saved you? If I didn't save you, would you still like me? Jing Lai heard Su Wan's words and stared at her blankly. You saved me. Even if it wasn't you. I still like you. Like you. It turned out that Boss Jing's setting was actually to fall in love at first sight with the savior he saw at first sight. Su Wan unfastened her seatbelt and quickly jumped out of the car. Mr. Jing, I'll leave first. I think you can stroll around here a few more times. Maybe you can meet your true savior. As she spoke, Su Wan waved her hand with her back facing Jing Lai and quickly ran to the other side of the road to take a taxi and leave. Xiao Wan. Jing Lai followed her out of the car and shouted a few words towards the opposite side of the street. Unfortunately, Su Wan had already disappeared in a taxi. Jing Lai heaved a heavy sigh. He was about to drive and chase after her when the corner of his clothes was suddenly grabbed by someone. Jing Lai suddenly turned his head, his gaze cold. What appeared in front of him was a woman wearing an old man's jacket. Her complexion was sallow, and her long hair was messy and dull. At this time, this sloppy-looking woman's eyes were shining as she looked at Jing Lai. Is that you? Do you still remember me? The woman's voice was very hoarse, and Jing Lai frowned slightly. Get lost? He didn't like people touching or approaching him, especially after what had happened. He had a very strong vigilance towards everyone. It's me. It's me. Jiang Yu wiped her face and turned to think that the other party didn't seem to have seen her face. Jiang Yu immediately took out the watch from her arms. Do you still recognize this watch? I redeemed it. Seeing the watch in Jiang Yu's hand, the disgust between Jing Lai's eyebrows became more obvious. When he woke up, he found that his watch was missing. At that time, he was still wondering if he had dropped it in a panic. It turned out that someone stole it while he was unconscious. It took Jiang Yu a month of hard and tiring work to redeem the watch. That night, she came back with money and food and found that the person she saved was gone. She thought that he had woken up and left by himself, so she waited in the basement for a few days and he didn't show up again. Later, Jiang Yu remembered the watch. She was afraid that the other party would misunderstand that she stole his watch and left without saying goodbye, so she tried her best to redeem the watch. These days, she has been wandering the streets just to find that person and return the watch to him. This watch, I didn't mean to pawn it. You were seriously injured at that time, and I gave all my possessions to the doctor to save you. Jiang Yu saw Jing Lai looking at her with eyes full of disgust, and she immediately explained anxiously. Oh, after listening to her words, Jing Lai sneered. You mean, you saved me? How do you want me to thank you? How much do you want? No, I don't want money. I really didn't do it for money. Jiang Yu heard the sarcasm in Jing Lai's tone, and she immediately waved her hand desperately. No money? Then how about I give you the watch? Jing Lai looked at Jiang Yu's hands that were no longer white, and the watch in her palm seemed so out of place. No, I'm here to return the watch to you. I don't need it. I feel sick when someone else touched it. Jing Lai raised his hand and knocked the watch in Jiang Yu's palm to the ground. Since you don't want anything, then I'm leaving. As he spoke, he got on the car without hesitation, started the engine and left. No money? No watch. Then why did she bother to say that she saved him? If she really did a good deed without leaving her name, then she wouldn't have appeared. Since she appeared, she must have something to ask. Jing Lai has seen many such people. As Jing Lai expected, it didn't take long for him to see the woman again. She quietly lingered near the Su family. At that time, the Su family was holding the engagement banquet of Su Wan and Xiao Qi. Many local celebrities came, and the woman was hiding in a corner, staring at the Su family's villa with resentment. What do you want to do? Jing Lai's voice suddenly sounded behind Jiang Yu. Jiang Yu was scared and pale. When she saw Jing Lai's face, she couldn't help but look happy. It's you. Are you looking for me? Jing Lai. I asked what you were doing. Jing Lai asked while following Jiang Yu's gaze and saw Su Wan and Xiao Qi in pure white dresses. At this time, Jiang Yu's eyes began to blur, and she couldn't help but say, Do you know? I grew up with Brother Xiao, and we have a good relationship. If it wasn't for that bitch Su Wan, we would have. Pa. A heavy slap landed on Jiang Yu's face, and she looked at the cold man beside her with stars in her eyes. You? What are you doing? Jing Lai stared coldly at Jiang Yu's red and swollen face. You deliberately approached me because of Xiao Wan? Xiao Wan? When Jiang Yu heard Jing Lai's name for Su Wan, she couldn't help but take a step back. Do you know Su Wan? More than know. Jing Lai raised an eyebrow at Jiang Yu. She is my savior. No, how could it be? You were deceived by her. She is the most vicious liar in the world. Oh. Jiang Yu's chin was suddenly pinched by Jing Lai. Jing Lai, who had been in the underworld since he was a child, his strength was by no means comparable to that of a playboy like Wen Hao. Jiang Yu felt that her chin was about to be crushed, and Jing Lai still looked at her coldly. Who is the vicious liar? Who knows? In the Su family's villa, Su Wan and Su Rui's engagement ceremony has come to an end. Kiss. Kiss. The surroundings were surrounded by classmates and friends who came to watch the ceremony, and even the popular Xiao Yuni pushed all the announcements and came back from thousands of miles away to attend his brother's engagement ceremony. Su Haiqing, who was sitting in the main seat, also showed a smile that had not been seen for a long time. Even when Shu, who was next to him, looked much better today than usual. Su Rui, wearing an elegant and handsome white suit, gently embraced Su Wan's slender waist. Wife, I love you. Me too. Su Wan gently closed her eyes and felt Su Rui's gentle kiss. She couldn't help but raise her lips and silently contacted the headquarters in her mind. Mission 002 completed, request to return. After the engagement ceremony, all the guests were sent away. Su Wan and Su Rui left the Su family. A few hours later, the two of them left the mission world one after another. Lost time in space. Su Rui came out of his mission cabin. Although he still didn't get a point, General Su still had a smile on his face. But this smile immediately disappeared after seeing an uninvited guest. Yun Sheng, who had been waiting for Su Rui, finally waited for Su Rui to leave the mission and return. Who knew that at the first sight of him, he felt that he was despised by the other party. Just now, he smiled so gently, but when he saw him, he immediately put away his smile with a cold face and whatnot. Yun Sheng asked himself that he was not so annoying. What's the matter? Su Rui came out of the connection cabin and looked at Yun Sheng doubtfully. Well, you'd better keep in mind the information that Su Ji gave you. Yun Sheng put the stack of information that Su Su gave him in Su Rui's hands, and then without waiting for Su Rui to ask, he quickly left. General Su looked at the information in his hands speechlessly. Rebirth Department, Qin Yu, Lin Ruo, Yi Kanhuan. Destruction Department, Yi Xin, Su Wan, Ding Jia. This is. Su Rui's face involuntarily became solemn after seeing Su Wan's name. This was obviously an internal information about the leaders of other departments. The information about each person was very detailed. Plane Destroyer, Number 2. Su Wan. The darkened from the collapsed plane, executor of the plane. Su Su. Seeing the first line of Su Wan's information, Su Rui's eyes stayed on Su Su's name for a long time. Destroyer's headquarters. When Su Wan returned to Number 2 execution room, she did not check her points as usual. She first looked up the details of the world's mission and follow-up. Shortly after she and Su Rui left, when Shu also passed away, Su Haiqing used all his property for charity. He himself also left D-City and went to the mountainous area where he first met Wen Shu to be a public welfare volunteer. Although Xiao Yunyi's journey in the entertainment circle was not smooth, he still became the hottest star. In that flashy and complicated circle, he always maintained his purest original heart and never changed. Luo Yu was successfully admitted to be City's university and was destined to embark on the path of an official in the future, but Su Nuo chose a university in the south in the second year. Everyone has their own pursuits and dreams. They have never given up on pursuing. As for love, once they have loved, they will no longer have regrets. As for Jiangyu, she has been pestering Jinglai, wanting to prove to Jinglai that she was the one who really saved him. It was also because of her persistent pestering that she finally angered Jinglai, and her end can be imagined. Suwan really doesn't understand this kind of person. Sometimes, meaningless explanations and entanglements will only make your life worse. Why can't some people figure it out? Let the past be the past. Chapter 159. Su Xiaowan, save me. Su Wan had just exited from the Number 2 warehouse and was about to check the task list when the door of Number 2 execution room was suddenly pushed open from the outside. Ding Jia rushed in and threw herself into Su Wan's arms regardless of anything. Fortunately, Su Wan dodged quickly and Ding Jia pounced on empty air. Su Xiaowan, Wan. Ding Jia looked at Su Wan with a wronged expression. Ever since she found out that Su Wan could also smile, Ding Jia felt that it was necessary to communicate with comrade Su Wan and promote the friendship between colleagues. What's the matter? Faced with Ding Jia's sudden enthusiasm, Su Wan could only accept her helplessness. Wan. Ding Jia pitifully looked at Su Wan with her lowly face. You have to save me. Only you can help me. Sure enough, there must be a request when one is unaccountably solicitous. What is it? Although Su Wan wasn't familiar with the people in the department, her character wasn't cold. Help me with a task. Ding Jia opened her communicator and directly pulled out a task. This baby has completed this task 3 times. 3 times? Su Xiaowan, can you do it? This is the most difficult female lead I've ever seen. I beg you to help me eliminate her. No, help me convert her. This baby has already used all the techniques I have, snatched her man and killed her close friend. Your mother in the end. She's still willing to block the knife for me. I'm really drunk. I'm really afraid that if I continue to do this task, one day, I'll be converted by her. Eh. Hearing Ding Jiejia's words, Su Wan's face also flashed with a hint of playfulness. How powerful was the female lead that could force Ding Jiejia to this state? This woman's holy aura is definitely max. Su Xiaowan, Wan, just agree. Ding Jiejia saw that Su Wan seemed to be somewhat moved and immediately blinked her big eyes pitifully. Okay, send the task to me. I'll take a look. If there's a suitable identity, I'll take it. Yes, there's definitely a suitable role for you. Seeing that Su Wan agreed, Ding Jiejia immediately excitedly sent the mission information to Su Wan's communicator. Ding Jiejia was also very clear about Su Wan's mission requirements. First, the character's identity must be an ex-girlfriend. Second, before entering the mission, the character cannot have an overly intimate relationship with anyone in the original world. In Ding Jiejia's eyes, such a request was simply ridiculous. Fortunately, there was an important storyline character in this world that completely fulfilled these two requirements. Roughly skimming through the plot, Su Wan nodded. Okay, I'll accept this mission. Thank you, moi. Ding Jiejia stepped forward and tiptoed, wanting to kiss Su Wan's face. In the end, Su Wan dodged it again. Ding Jiejia, sob. I feel like Su Wan dislikes me. Please comfort me. Seeing that Su Wan had accepted the mission and entered the connection cabin, Ding Jiejia was still standing in the number 2 passage room, reluctant to part. AI, when can I do missions here? It was said that number 2 was much more comfortable than number 3. Just as Ding Jiejia was looking at the connection pod with envy, her communicator's locator suddenly began to flicker. Oh my, the male god finally did a mission. Ding Jiejia immediately turned on the locator's plane lock function excitedly, and then there was no then. Looking at Su Wan's connection pod, Ding Jiejia looked at the plane signal on her locator with a look of astonishment. The male god entered the mission world. That world was originally her mission, but just now, she transferred it to Su Wan. Ding Jiejia. No one persuade me, let me cry quietly for a while. Mission world. Su Wan's consciousness was linked to the body of the mission target. For a moment, her consciousness was blurred, and she only felt cold all over. It's so cold, she unconsciously murmured. At this time, a warm body suddenly hugged her tightly. Xiao Wan, you bear with it. It will be fine after tonight. The voice was a weak female voice, very light and pleasant to listen to. Su Wan slowly opened her eyes. It was pitch black in front of her, and she could only see the vague outline beside her in the haze. This is Sister Yunhua? Su Wan called out softly. Hearing her voice, Yin Yunhua couldn't help but look down at the person in her arms. I'm here, Xiao Wan. What's wrong? It's nothing. It's still a little cold. Su Wan replied in a low voice. She just wanted to confirm if the person who was hugging her in the cold night was the female lead. Still cold? When Yin Yunhua heard Su Wan's words, she couldn't help but let go of her hands and directly took off the palace-made uniform on her body. For you? She wrapped Su Wan's whole body with her robe, and then opened her arms to hold Su Wan tightly in her arms. On a cold night, on a quiet and remote palace road, 2 young palace maids knelt on the imperial road, quietly hugging each other. Okay, it's not cold like this. Yin Yunhua whispered to herself. Her tone was still so soft. It was indeed a lot warmer. Su Wan gently closed her eyes and began to sort out the plot of this world. The female lead of this world was Yin Yunhua, who was next to her. Yin Yunhua was not called Yin Yunhua. She was originally just a maid of Jinzhou's Yin family. It coincided with the imperial palace's triennial selection of palace family members to enter the palace. The Yin family originally had 2 places, but the Yin family's daughter was unwilling to enter the palace. Later, Master Yin bribed the officials in charge of the selection of palace family members and sent his unfavored concubine daughter, Yin Yuqing, and the female lead, who changed her name to Yin Yunhua, into the palace. The new palace family members who entered the palace were only 13 years old, which was the age where they were ignorant of worldly affairs. Everyone was uniformly arranged to be in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, under the unified management and guidance of the nanny in charge. In a brand new and unfamiliar environment, Although Yin Yuqing and Yin Yunhua were not biological sisters, they still depended on each other. The relationship between the two people was closer than that of biological sisters. A year later, Yin Yuqing and Yin Yunhua were assigned to different places by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Because Yin Yunhua had been a maid since she was a child, her needlework and embroidery were very outstanding, so she was directly sent to the Shangfu Bureau. She was usually responsible for the selection of embroidery patterns, the rotation of the palace clothes for the 4 seasons, and other work. Yin Yuqing, who had not been favored in the Yin family since she was a child, was directly sent to the Shangfu Bureau because she was eloquent and good at coaxing people. Then, she was arranged to serve a nobleman who had just entered the palace. The lives of the two sisters began to take a turn at this time. Yin Yunhua had a docile personality. She had been particularly gentle, honest, and willing to help others since she was a child. In the Shangfu Bureau, the competition between the new and old palace maids was very fierce. Because Yunhua was obedient and diligent, she was highly regarded by Master Liao in the bureau, which brought her a lot of trouble. At this time, Yin Yunhua, who was in deep trouble, received help from another palace maid. This palace maid was Su Wan, who entered the palace with her. Su Wan was from the capital, and her family was originally a scholarly family. How could it be that when it reached her father's generation, because old man Su was addicted to gambling, his family declined and he also owed others a huge amount of money. Unable to repay, her father had no choice but to sell her into the palace. Su Wan and Yin Yunhua were assigned to the Shangfu Bureau together. The two people did not have any intersection at first, but Su Wan couldn't bear to see others always bullying Yin Yunhua, and Yin Yunhua was honest and always silently enduring, so Su Wan began to help Yin Yunhua. When she was bullied, she helped her fight back together. Later, the two people slowly became very good sisters. After Su Wan became friends with Yin Yunhua, she told Yin Yunhua about her life experience and worries. It turned out that before the Su family declined, Father Su had set a marriage for Su Wan. After the Su family declined, the marriage was no longer mentioned. Who knew that after Su Wan entered the palace, she would accidentally meet her fiancé, Shen Shengbei. The Shen family was also a rising star in the capital. Chen Shengbei had just turned 16 years old and entered the palace to become a royal guard as soon as he reached adulthood. It could be said that his future was limitless. The two people were childhood sweethearts when they were young. Although they hadn't seen each other for many years, by chance, Chen Shengbei met someone from the Shangfu Bureau when he was patrolling in the imperial city. He recognized Su Wan's jade pendant in the crowd, and later, he asked someone to send a letter to Su Wan. Su Wan, who received the letter, was naturally very happy. She also wrote a reply to Chen Shengbei, but she couldn't find someone who could help her deliver the letter. At this time, Yin Yunhua remembered Yin Yuqing. Yin Yuqing was assigned to Lu Guiren's palace as a servant. Lu Guiren was favored at this time, and Yin Yuqing was appreciated by Lu Guiren because of her eloquence. As the saying goes, when a man achieves the Tao, his chickens and dogs also rise to heaven. When Lu Guiren was favored, the palace servants in her palace also followed suit. Yin Yunhua introduced Su Wan to Yin Yuqing, and the three people immediately became sworn sisters. According to age, Yin Yunhua was the elder sister, Yin Yuqing was the second sister, and Su Wan was the youngest third sister. Yin Yuqing was naturally very attentive in doing things for her third sister, so Su Wan began to write letters to Chen Shengbei. Originally, the two people had agreed that when Su Wan entered the palace for 3 years, when it was time to leave the palace, Chen Shengbei would spend money to find someone to let her leave the palace and tie the knot with him. But in the second year after Su Wan entered the palace, Yin Yuqing was visited by the emperor and was later conferred the title of beauty. Yin Yuqing, who had an unstable foundation in the palace, naturally wanted to find a loyal and reliable candidate for her own use. She originally took a fancy to Yin Yunhua, but Yin Yunhua was too honest. Yin Yuqing, who had long learned how to survive in the palace from Lu Guiren, finally chose Su Wan. After Su Wan followed Yin Yuqing, she saw Yin Yuqing being favored step by step, from beauty to concubine. She received all the favor and also received very rich rewards. Those precious snow satin, ginseng, and emerald pearls, which one of them wasn't hard to find. Slowly, Su Wan's heart also began to change. She had seen the current emperor in Yin Yuqing's palace, a young and handsome emperor who wouldn't be tempted. Because of her own thoughts, Su Wan began to alienate Qin Shangbei. She never read or replied to Qin Shangbei's letters, and she even wrote a heartless letter to Yin Yunhua to help her hand it over to Qin Shangbei. At this time, Yin Yunhua had already gained a foothold in the Shangfu Bureau. She had also seen Qin Shangbei several times and knew that he was a good man who was infatuated with love. In fear that Qin Shangbei would be sad, Yin Yunhua left Su Wan's heartless letter. She imitated Su Wan's notes and continued to communicate with Qin Shangbei for more than a year. In the third year of entering the palace, Qin Shangbei had been promoted to the chief guard. He finally had the opportunity to patrol the palace at night. It was at that time that he met Su Wan again and was even rejected by Su Wan. At this time, Qin Shangbei knew that the person who had been communicating with him for more than a year turned out to be Yin Yunhua. Qin Shangbei was disappointed with Su Wan's heartlessness. At the same time, he became good friends with Yin Yunhua because of her kindness and even slowly fell in love with Yin Yunhua. At this time, Su Wan was deliberately approaching the emperor, but who was Yin Yuqing? When she was still the steward of Lu Gairen's palace maid, she used her master's shoulder to climb onto the dragon bed. Now, she naturally wouldn't let herself repeat Lu Gairen's mistakes, so Su Wan's dream of becoming an imperial concubine naturally fell through. She was even framed by another female official in the palace. After being beaten, she was dragged to the Zinzheku to do the dirtiest and most tiring things. Once she woke up from her dream, Su Wan began to regret her past. She thought that she would be trapped in the dark Zinzheku for the rest of her life. Who knew that at this time, Yin Yunhua would stand up for her? Yin Yunhua used all her monthly salary and even asked Qin Shangbei to help. The two of them used silver to finally rescue Su Wan from the Zinzheku and arrange for her to work in the Shangshu Bureau. The work in the Shangshu Bureau was very easy. Su Wan was only responsible for lighting the lamps and even serving His Majesty and the Empress as they bathed and changed clothes. This was another good opportunity for Su Wan to get close to His Majesty. But at this time, Su Wan had already given up on the high-risk profession of Empress. She learned from Yin Yunhua that Qin Shangbei had put in a lot of effort to rescue her. Su Wan was moved and remembered his kindness. She decided to leave the palace in the future and live a good life with Qin Shangbei. Su Wan, who had already regarded Yin Yunhua as her best sister, told her thoughts. Yin Yunhua was happy for Su Wan, but she also felt a little sad. In fact, in the past days, she and Qin Shangbei were already in love with each other. But when she thought of Su Wan's suffering in her engagement with Qin Shangbei, Yin Yunhua felt that she should fulfill their wishes. As a result, Yin Yunhua began to deliberately be indifferent and alienate Qin Shangbei. She did not even hesitate to ruin her image in front of him, making him feel that she was a selfish and vicious woman. Unfortunately, at this time, Qin Shangbei was already deeply in love with her. How could he be deceived by Yin Yunhua's clumsy acting skills? Qin Shangbei decided to find Su Wan and lay his cards on the table, but Yin Yunhua refused no matter what. While the two people were pulling and pulling, they saw that Su Wan had already appeared behind them with a cold expression. Su Wan, who felt that she was deceived by her most trusted sister and her lover, couldn't accept this blow for a while. She accidentally knocked over the oil lamp when she was lighting the lamps that night and almost caused a big fire. After making such a big mistake, Su Wan should have been taken to the worship room to be punished, but she was taken directly to Xiaoning Palace, where the noble imperial concubine Liang lived. Imperial concubine Liang entered the palace early and was of noble birth, but she had never been favored. Seeing that the newly entered palace's beautiful young mistress and those young and tender palace maids were all treated equally, Imperial concubine Liang sighed in her heart that she had passed away. For the sake of her and her family's status, she began to look for outstanding candidates in the palace, wanting to train them into her own chess pieces and present them to His Majesty. And Su Wan was the person chosen by Imperial concubine Liang. At this time, Su Wan had great hatred for Yin Yunhua, Qin Shangbei, and even Yin Yuqing. Her desire to turn over and retaliate was particularly strong. So under Imperial concubine Liang's training, Su Wan successfully attracted the attention of His Majesty, Dongfang Yao, and after being visited, she was granted the title of nobility as she wished. With imperial concubine Liang as her backing, Su Wan began to fight openly and covertly with Yin Yuqing. At the same time, she also constantly sent people to the Shangfu Bureau to find trouble with Yin Yunhua. Yin Yunhua was worthy of being the good holy mother of the great Shang dynasty. No matter what difficulties she encountered, she refused to bow her head. No matter what unfair treatment she encountered, she could clench her teeth and persevere, never resisting. Deep in the palace, another year passed in the blink of an eye. Both Su Wan and Yin Yuqing were pregnant. The flames of war between the two people escalated in order to have children. At this time, the two people who were fighting in full swing were harmed by another imperial concubine. The two people lost their children at the same time. Su Wan's health was extremely poor because she had a chronic illness in the Zinzeku. After an accident, she almost bled to death. Fortunately, the newly promoted imperial physician, Lu Mushuan, had superb medical skills and pulled her out of the line of life and death. At this time, Yin Yuqing still mistakenly thought that Su Wan was the mastermind behind the scenes. She began to collect evidence and complain in front of the emperor and the empress dowager. Because the evidence was conclusive, the crime of murdering the heir of the imperial family caused Su Wan to directly enter the cold palace. She was bedridden and had no one to rely on in the cold palace. At this time, Yin Yunhua appeared again, and she also brought imperial physician Lu to help Su Wan see a doctor. This time, Su Wan, who didn't have long to live, truly saw through the illusions of riches and honor. She finally reconciled with Yin Yunhua on the hospital bed. Yin Yunhua versus Su Wan. The Holy Mother successfully subdued a vicious supporting female who abandoned darkness for light. Of course, this was only the first vicious supporting female that the Holy Mother saved on the road to the harem. After Su Wan was banished to the cold palace, the harem became the battlefield of Yin Yuqing and Jin Fei. It turned out that Lu Guoren once again entered the eyes of Dongfang Yao because of the song Huainan Dream, and he was quickly upgraded to Jin Fei. At this time, Yin Yuqing also learned from the cold palace that Su Wan was really wronged. The mastermind behind the scenes who caused her to lose her child turned out to be the former Lu Guoren, the current Jin Fei. The two people could be said to be enemies, and when enemies meet, their eyes turn red. Jin Fei learned that Yin Yuqing and Yin Yunhua were biological sisters, so she found someone to set up a trap to frame Yin Yunhua. As a result, Yin Yuqing beat her at her own game and put on a show in front of the emperor. This allowed Yin Yuqing to smoothly gain the emperor's love and trust, but at the same time, it also let the emperor get to know Yin Yunhua. Yin Yunhua's kindness and sincerity made Dongfang Yao, who grew up in the imperial city and was accustomed to deception, feel that it was very precious, so he transferred Yin Yunhua to his side to be the imperial attendant. Since Yin Yunhua's promotion, her status in the harem has risen, and she has also received infinite malice from various concubines. Fortunately, Yin Yunhua has always been in line with the principle of having a clear conscience, contentment, and doing good deeds without leaving a name. In danger again and again, she successfully averted danger and even saved two concubines who had fallen out of favor. At this time, Yin Yunhua was already a popular person around the emperor, and even Dongfang Yao had slowly fallen in love with this personal palace maid who accompanied him. Unfortunately, he knew a long time ago that Yin Yunhua liked Qinxingbei. As an emperor, he didn't want his beloved woman to be trapped in the bloodless battlefield of the harem for a lifetime. Dongfang Yao had the intention to fulfill Yin Yunhua's wish, but who knew that at this time, Yin Yuqing, who had a deep sisterly relationship with Yin Yunhua on the surface, would suddenly make a move. In order not to let Yin Yunhua take the emperor away from her, Yin Yuqing arranged a scene to set up Yin Yunhua and Lu Mushuan. Lu Mushuan had long been in love with Yin Yunhua. The two often met in the inner palace, but they had always been close friends. After being framed by Yin Yuqing, the two people were given a powerful aphrodisiac and locked in an empty palace. In order to protect the innocence of his beloved, Lu Mushuan did not hesitate to harm himself. In the end, although the two people were found in time by the emperor, Lu Mushuan was unconscious because of excessive blood loss, and Yin Yunhua, who was also affected by the aphrodisiac, was immediately carried by Dongfang Yao to the imperial hospital for treatment. Afterwards, Dongfang Yao immediately sent someone to investigate the matter thoroughly. Yin Yuqing saw that her affairs had been exposed, and she couldn't help but run to Yin Yunua's sickbed and plead bitterly. Yin Yunua, who had always been kind-hearted, naturally believed Yin Yuqing's words. She pleaded for her sister in front of the emperor with her sick body, and Yin Yuqing was exempted from punishment. After this incident, although Yin Yuqing was not banished to the Cold Palace, she was demoted from Duan Fei to Duan Pin, and since then, she has completely lost Dongfang Yao's favor. Yin Yuqing, who had been a concubine's daughter since childhood and had never been willing to bow her head to her fate, still refused to admit defeat at this time. Without the emperor's favor, she unexpectedly gained the favor of Rui Wang Dongfang Li. Dongfang Li was the son of the former emperor's imperial brother and the cousin of the current emperor. He seemed to be a playboy, but in fact, he was extremely ambitious. Dongfang Li, who wanted to seize the throne, took advantage of Yin Yuqing's disfavor to get close to her. He used feelings as bait to slowly conquer Yin Yuqing's heart. After she was dead set on him, he began to instruct Yin Yuqing to tamper with the emperor's food and drink. At this time, because Yin Yuqing was not favored, there were naturally no informants around her, which became the best opportunity for her to make a move. Within a few days, Dongfang Yao was poisoned into a coma, and all the evidence pointed to Yin Yunua as the murderer who poisoned the emperor. Yin Yunua, who was framed and imprisoned, was waiting to be beheaded in prison. At this time, Yin Yuqing finally couldn't help going to the prison to show off her strength. At the same time, Dongfang Li took advantage of Dongfang Yao's poisoning to premeditate a coup d'état. At the critical moment, Lu Muxuan tested the poison with his own body and successfully rescued Dongfang Yao. At this time, Qin Shangbei also brought the elite guards to the rescue. Dongfang Li's palace coup d'état failed and was sent to prison. Yin Yunua's grievances were cleared and she was released from prison. After she was released from prison, Dongfang Yao rewarded her according to her merits and personally betrothed Qin Shangbei and Yin Yunua in marriage. At this time, because she heard Yin Yuqing's repentance in prison and saw her extremely embarrassed situation, Yin Yunua, who was once again moved with compassion, once again pleaded for Yin Yuqing in front of Dongfang Yao, "Holy Mother, you are really enough." For the sake of Yin Yunua's face, Dongfang Yao once again pardoned Yin Yuqing's death sentence, but changed her to a temple for a lifetime of cultivation. On the day that Yin Yuqing was released from prison and left the capital, Yin Yunua personally saw her off outside the capital. It was thought that the two sisters were reluctant to part, but who knew that Yin Yuqing, who had already lost her mind and fell into madness, suddenly pulled out a dagger from her cuff and stabbed it at Yin Yunua's chest. At the critical moment, Qin Shangbei turned around and held Yin Yunua in his arms, blocking a fatal knife for her. Afterwards, Yin Yuqing committed suicide, and although the seriously injured Qin Shangbei was rescued by Lu Muxuan, he could no longer practice martial arts and lead troops in this life. The plot ended here. Qin Shangbei resigned and returned to her hometown of Jinzhou with Yin Yunua. The two lived a happy life where the man farmed and the woman weaved. Is this the so-called happy ending? Happy ending your sister's husband? Let's not talk about how many innocent palace maids and eunuchs were cannon fodder in Holy Mother Yan's harem promotion record. Let's talk about the two men, Qin Shangbei and Lu Muxuan. One mutilated himself and tested poison for her. A young and promising great imperial doctor eventually became a sickly person who couldn't stop taking medicine, and the other was a great general who should have commanded thousands of troops to serve the country, but in the end, because of her, he became a third-class disability who couldn't lift his hand. Female lead, you have the world in your heart, you have a compassionate heart, you save all living beings, you don't cheat others, you only cheat your own man. After Su Wan lit a candle for the male lead and supporting male in her heart, she couldn't help but mutter in her heart. In this world, when it comes to affectionate supporting males, it would be Lu Muxuan and Dongfang Yao. If Su Rue enters this mission world, what will his identity be? If it's Lu Muxuan, it's fine, but if it's Dongfang Yao who has 3,000 beauties hemph. Chapter 160. In the late autumn morning, the sky was gray and a thin layer of white frost had condensed on the red brick imperial road. "Sister, wake up!" Her stiff body was pushed a few times, and Su Wan's consciousness gradually became sober. She slowly opened her eyes and saw a young palace maid wearing a cyan palace dress. This was the little palace maid who got up early in the morning to clean the imperial road. Such a palace maid had no rank, and her status was only higher than the slave palace maids of the laundry bureau and Zinseku. When the little palace maid saw Suwon wake up, she immediately lowered her head and became docile. "Sister, it's dawn. Are you people from the 6th bureau? The sister next to me seems to have a fever." I called her for a long time, but she didn't respond. Suwon had just moved her stiff limbs at this time. When she heard the words of the little palace maid, she remembered Yin Yunhua next to her. Yin Yunhua's robe was still on her body. Now she was only wearing a thin inner garment. Her whole body was frozen, and her face showed a strange red color. Oh no! Suwon immediately struggled to stand up. At this moment, she remembered the plot she was experiencing now. It was in the original plot when she and Yin Yunhua were framed by those old palace maids in the Shangfu Bureau. The two of them sent flower patterns to Empress Shu to choose from yesterday. As a result, those flower patterns were secretly cut. Empress Shu was angry and punished the two of them to kneel outside her Jingyan palace for a night. Because she knelt all night, Suwon couldn't exert any strength after standing up, and her hands and feet were stiff. She tried to support Yin Yunhua and failed several times. In desperation, Suwon had to look up at the little palace maid beside her. "What is your name?" Replying to sister, this servant's name is Bingyue. Bingyue also looked to be 13 or 14 years old. The little girl looked quite clever. Suwon's eyes flashed. "Bingyue, do you know Imperial Physician Liu in the Imperial Hospital?" "Imperial Physician Liu?" Bingyue's eyes turned. Is sister talking about Imperial Physician Liu Mushuan? Liu Mushuan was young, handsome, and had superb medical skills. Because he often went in and out of the harem to treat the Empress Dowager and various concubines, most of the palace maids in the harem recognized him. "It is Imperial Physician Liu Mushuan. I don't have any strength now. Bingyue, help me carry her to Imperial Physician Liu. We are very familiar with Imperial Physician Liu." Suwon also didn't know if Su Rue had already entered the mission at this time, and was his identity Liu Mushuan or Dongfang Yao. Now that Yin Yunhua had a fever like this, Suwon had no time to think about it. She could only find someone to treat her as soon as possible. If the female lead, Darren's brain, was burned, then what kind of mission would she be able to do? Bingyue hesitated. As the lowest-ranked palace maid, she was naturally willing to be on good terms with the high-ranked palace maids. But the Imperial Hospital wasn't a place anyone could enter. What if, Bingyue, don't tell me you want to keep cleaning the Imperial Road? Seeing Bingyue's hesitation, Suwon couldn't help but whisper, "As long as you help me, I won't treat you unfairly." Hearing Suwon's promise, Bingyue bit her lips and hesitated. In the end, she looked up at Suwon's face and said, "Okay, sister, let me help you." As she spoke, she quickly stepped forward and supported Yin Yunhua, who was already somewhat unconscious, from the other side. The two people walked all the way in the direction of the Imperial Hospital. At this time, the sky was not yet bright. In the entire palace, except for the people who were cleaning the Imperial Road early in the morning, there were almost no other figures. In fact, Liu Mushuan was not always in the Imperial Hospital. Sometimes he would stay directly in the Imperial Hospital if he had to see patients overnight, and sometimes if there was nothing going on in the harem, he would leave the palace and go back to his own house. Suwon was thinking about the possibility of Su Rue being Liu Mushuan along the way. Until she and Bingyue arrived outside the Imperial Hospital, the two people were directly stopped by the servant at the entrance of the hospital. The Imperial Hospital is an important place. No one is allowed to enter without permission. "Two sisters, do you have the jade card to enter and exit the palace?" The manservant at the door stopped the two of them and asked respectfully. He had been guarding the Imperial Hospital for a few months. He knew almost all the first-class palace maids and female officials who served the concubines. Now that he saw the person in front of him was rather unfamiliar, he naturally had to ask about it according to the rules. "We are looking for Imperial Physician Liu. Is Imperial Physician Liu here?" Suwon glanced at the servant at the door and asked faintly, "Imperial Physician Liu hasn't gotten up yet." As the servant spoke, he looked at Suwon and then looked at Yin Yunhua, who was being supported by Suwon and Bingyue. "This sister seems to have a high fever. If you don't have the master's jade card, you can go to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. The Ministry of Internal Affairs in the imperial city was in charge of the food and drink of all the servants in the palace, as well as their monthly salaries and daily necessities. If the palace maids and servants were sick or injured, they could also go to the Ministry of Internal Affairs to spend money to see a doctor. This little brother, we are Imperial Physician Lu's fellow countrymen. When Suwon heard the servant's words, she immediately raised her wrist, took out her purse from her sleeve, and handed it over with a smile. Please go in and inform Imperial Physician Lu. Sorry for troubling you. This. The servant looked at the purse handed over by Suwon and hesitated for a moment. When he thought that Imperial Physician Lu was famous for his good temper, his eyes narrowed and he quickly took Suwon's purse. It turns out that elder sister is Imperial Physician Lu's fellow countryman. You should have said so earlier. This little one will go in and inform. As he spoke, the servant quickly turned around and entered the door of the Imperial Hospital. Not long after, he hurriedly rushed out again. Elder sisters, Imperial Physician Lu has just woken up. Please come in. Suwon and Bingyue looked at each other, and the two immediately helped Yin Yunhua into the Imperial Hospital. The entire courtyard was still filled with the faint fragrance of herbs. At this time, Yin Yunhua also regained some consciousness. She murmured and slowly opened her eyes. Seeing the unfamiliar scenery in front of her, Yin Yunhua frowned and her eyes were in a trance. It wasn't until she caught a glimpse of Suwon's face that her eyes lit up. Xiao Wan, this is... Where are we going? Sister Yunhua, you have a fever. I brought you to see Imperial Physician Lu. Suwon saw that Yin Yunhua had woken up and couldn't help but whisper in her ear. Imperial Physician Lu? Isn't he the most famous one in the harem? No need. I'm fine. It just so happens that I'm off today. I'll go back and sleep. Xiao Wan, to see the Imperial Physician? It costs a lot of money. Yin Yunhua had never been to the Imperial Hospital in the year she entered the palace, but she had heard a lot about the Imperial Hospital. This place was a place for the masters to see a doctor. She was just a palace maid. How could she afford it? Just as Yin Yunhua was struggling to turn around, Suwon and Bingyue had already entered the door, and a clear and melodious male voice was heard in the room. You are my fellow countrymen? The man's tone rose, but his tone was very gentle and did not seem particularly cold. Hearing that voice, Suwon abruptly raised her head. In the end, she saw a handsome young face. It's not Surue. Suwon's face immediately sank. So, Surue's identity in this world is the current emperor, Dongfang Yao? Zhonggong, Qingkuan Palace. Surue opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was the golden Nanmu bedpost carved with dragons and phoenixes. The luxurious and spacious palace was filled with the familiar smell of ambergris, and a soft, boneless body was wrapped around him like a snake. Feeling that there was another person on the bed, and it was a woman wearing nothing, Surue's face suddenly changed. Almost at the moment when his consciousness returned, he suddenly kicked the woman beside him off the bed. The still sleepy imperial concubine was kicked to the ground, and she instantly woke up. Hearing the sound in the inner room, the chamberlain who had been guarding outside immediately rushed over. Your Majesty? Your Majesty? The long hair of the woman on the ground was disheveled, her seductive eyes looking at the beautiful and handsome face on the dragon bed, while the chamberlain on the side bent over, slightly raised his eyelids, and hesitantly looked at the man on the dragon bed. Get out. Surue's eyes were cold as he roared. The woman on the ground turned pale and looked at him with lustrous eyes. Your Majesty, this concubine didn't wear anything. Hearing the woman's voice, Surue's eyes darkened again. You don't want to get out? Then, stay. Your Majesty, hearing Surue's words, the imperial concubine's beautiful eyes flashed, and she was about to smile charmingly at His Majesty. As a result, she saw the man on the dragon bed raise his hand and pull out the emperor's sword that had been hanging on the left side of the dragon bed. The peerlessly sharp sword drew a cold light in the air and instantly penetrated her youthful and seductive body. An arrow pierced through the heart, without a drop of extra blood spilling out. It is said that accompanying the emperor is like accompanying a tiger. The chamberlain on the side was indeed a senior talent who could move unhindered in the harem. Not only was he indifferent to the murder happening around him, but he also calmly bent over and slowly walked to the imperial concubine. He raised his hand to check her breath. "Reporting to your majesty, Yu Guiran offended the emperor's face and has been executed. What's the use of one dead?" General Su felt very sad. He swore to God that he didn't touch that woman at all. Even if they slept on the same bed, it was the original owner Dongfang Yao who had sex with her last night. His body and heart were innocent. Chapter 161. Seeing his master sitting on the dragon bed in a daze, the head chamberlain Wang Yi immediately directed the little eunuch behind him to carry Yu Guiran's body away, and then turned his head to instruct the palace maids on the side to clean up the ground. After silently finishing all this, Wang Yi bent over and moved to the dragon bed, picked up the bright yellow inner garment on the side and draped it over Su Rui's body. He pinched his throat and asked in a low voice, "Your Majesty, do you want to take a bath and change clothes? It's almost time to go to the imperial court." "Go to your sister's imperial court, ah." Su Rui looked up at Wang Yi, and just one look made Wang Yi break out in a cold sweat. His ice-cold, deep, and gloomy eyes were like a cold lake, causing people to shrink back. Wang Yi trembled and took a few steps back, his body involuntarily bowing lower. "Take a bath." After a long silence, Su Rui finally spoke in a low voice. When Wang Yi heard his master's voice, he immediately turned around and greeted the palace maids in the Qingquan palace with the things that had been prepared a long time ago. Su Rui on the dragon bed looked at the clothes belonging to Dongfang Yao and couldn't help but frown. When he raised his eyes again, a group of beautiful palace maids was already in front of him. "Everyone retreat." General Su was angry again. Isn't this forcing people to make mistakes? Seeing the emperor's anger, the palace maids on the side immediately trembled and all knelt down and retreated. On the side, Wang Yi's face, which had been pretending to be calm, finally showed a trace of panic. What's wrong with His Majesty today? How did that Yu Guiran provoke His Majesty? You see, His Majesty is so angry that everyone is not pleasing to the eye now. Wang Yi. Just as Wang Yi was secretly cursing, Su Rui had already sat up from the dragon bed. He pulled the inner garment draped over his shoulder and threw it to the ground in disgust. "Everything, including this dragon bed, destroy it all for Jin. Also, immediately call the chamberlain to come in and help Jin bathe and change clothes. In the future, there will be no more palace maids in the Qingquan palace." Wang Yi. Terrible, terrible. Could it be that His Majesty had been provoked by Yu Guiran to hate women? Hearing Su Rui's instructions, Wang Yi immediately turned around to execute, but his heart was already full of tears in the imperial hospital. In the clean and tidy room, Yin Yunhua leaned weakly on the bed, while Lu Muxuan sat on the yellow pear-wood chair beside the bed, holding a silver needle in his hand, leaving needle holes on her white wrist. Yin Yunhua, who was not yet 15 years old, was sitting so close to a man for the first time in her life. Moreover, she had to roll up her sleeves in front of him and expose her white wrists. Such intimate contact made Yin Yunhua feel like her heart was pounding and her face was burning. Aya, Sister Yunhua's face seems to be even redder. Bingyue, who had been standing on the side, couldn't help but exclaim when she saw Yin Yunhua's red cheeks. "Suan, Sister Frozen Moon, I know that you're actually trying to be familiar with us, but did you really not mean to yell like this?" Hearing Bingyue's blabbermouth, Yin Yunhua immediately felt ashamed and subconsciously moved her arm. "Don't move." A glimmer of light flashed in Lu Muxuan's eyes. His slender and clean fingers gently pressed on Yin Yunhua's arm. A slightly hot electric current came from his fingertips, making Yin Yunhua's whole body stiffen, not daring to move. Catching a glimpse of the smile that flashed across Lu Muxuan's lips, Su Wan, who was not far away, also slightly raised the corner of her lips. She seemed to have accidentally paired Imperial Physician Lu and the female lead Darren together. Speaking of which, first come, first served is really a lot of knowledge, ah. In the original plot, Imperial Physician Lu lost because he appeared too late, ah. After a while, it's done. Lu Muxuan put away the silver needles and gently and carefully helped Yin Yunhua smooth her sleeves. "I will prescribe you medicine again." You have to take it on time after you go back, so that the cold energy in your body will be completely removed. Seeing Lu Mushuan turn to write a prescription on the wooden table on the side, Yin Yunhua bit her lip and looked at Lu Mushuan's thin back for the first time. She weakly opened her mouth and said, "Imperial Physician Lu, the consultation fee. How much is the consultation fee?" Asking about the consultation fee, Yin Yunhua was obviously not confident. She subconsciously touched the purse around her waist, which contained the monthly payment she had just received this month. Consultation fee? After writing the last word of the prescription, Lu Mushuan turned to look at Su Wan, who had been standing silently not far away. "Your little sister has already paid the consultation fee for you." Xiao Wan? Yin Yunhua's eyes immediately fell on Su Wan. She knew the situation of Su Wan's family. Now Father Su still owed a lot of money, but she was even poorer than herself. "It's okay, Sister Yunhua. Imperial Physician Lu is a famous philanthropist. He treats people very cheaply. I still have money left over from the money I gave him." Seeing Yin Yunhua looking at her, Su Wan immediately whispered with a smile on her face. She couldn't help but take a step forward, raised her little hand and waved in front of Lu Mushuan. "Imperial Physician Lu, change?" Lu Mushuan smiled gently and turned his eyes to the door. "Fu Lu, change for the patient?" When the servant named Fu Lu heard Lu Mushuan's call, he immediately lowered his head and walked to Su Wan with a red face. "Sister, your change?" As he spoke, he reluctantly stuffed all the silver that Su Wan had given him not long ago back into Su Wan's palm. "It's too much." Su Wan bent her eyes and stuffed half of the broken silver back into Fu Lu's hand. "Your name is Fu Lu? In the future, pay more attention to Imperial Physician Lu. Do good deeds, and you will be rewarded. Be a good person, do good deeds, and you will be rewarded." Hearing Su Wan's words, Fu Lu immediately looked at her with sparkling eyes and a face full of excitement. "Su Wan. Don't thank Elder Sister. Please call Elder Sister Holy Mother Su." That's right. After Su Wan entered the mission, she had already thought of a super good idea that completely beat Holy Mother Yin. When you meet a pear blossom in the rain, please don't be careless and be more pitiful than her. When you meet a good Holy Mother who returns evil with good, then please be bold and rest assured to help her. Let her feel that your whole body is full of positive energy. Su Wan has always believed that negative is positive. When two Holy Mothers walk together, it's not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. In short, for this mission, Su Wan decided to fight. "Aya, I'll go." Just as Su Wan was about to help Yin Yunhua leave, a panting figure yelled and rushed into Lu Mushuan's room. After entering the room, the person quickly patted his small chest, raised his phoenix eyes, and quickly swept his gaze across the room. "Yin Yunhua, Su Wan, you two, really tired Zagia to death." Chun Gonggong. This person was none other than the steward of the Shangfu Bureau, Chunji. At this time, Chunji saw that Yin Yunhua and Su Wan still wanted to salute him. He immediately waved his small hand and stepped forward to grab both of their hands. "You two, come back to the Shangfu Bureau with me. You guys are in trouble this time. In big trouble." "What big trouble?" Hearing Chunji's words, Yin Yunhua's face changed, and Bingyue, who was originally following behind the two people, took 2 steps back without a trace, keeping a certain distance from the two people. The atmosphere in the room was a little tense and depressing for a while. Lu Mushuan kept his eyes down, seemingly indifferent, but in fact, he had been waiting for Chunji to continue. "It's His Majesty he." As soon as Chunji mentioned His Majesty, his androgynous little face immediately turned pale. "His Majesty is in the Shangfu Bureau, killed a lot of people." At the thought of the scene of blood flowing like a river, Chunji felt his stomach tremble. On the way here, he also saw corpses rolled up with mats coming in and out of the Jingyun Palace's palace gate. That blood, dark red, that horrifying awe. In short, early this morning, His Majesty was furious for some reason. First, he stabbed Yuguerin to death with a sword. Then he ordered Xu Fei's death and massacred the Jingyun Palace. Now, isn't it the Shangfu Bureau's turn now? Coincidentally, most of the people in the Shangfu Bureau were here today, but Su Wan and Yin Yunhua were missing. Chunji simply didn't dare to think about it anymore. These two little girls were probably doomed today, and it would be hard for them to escape death. His Majesty killed people in the Shangfu Bureau? Hearing Chunji's words, Yin Yunua's legs softened. What about Liao Si? Is Liao Si okay? The Holy Mother really put others before herself, making Su Wan unable to catch up to her awe. It seems that this fake Holy Mother still needs to continue to work hard. But His Majesty? Isn't it General Su? Chapter 162. Su Wan and Yin Yunhua followed behind Qianji and almost ran straight from the Imperial Hospital to the Shangfu Bureau. Before they reached the door, they saw a group of servants carrying a blood-dripping mat coming out of the palace gate of the Shangfu Bureau. Yin Yunhua tightly covered her mouth and turned her face in horror. Her whole body leaned in front of Su Wan, and her other hand did not forget to cover Su Wan's eyes with a trembling hand. She had been in the palace for more than a year. Although she had long heard that people's lives were like grass in the depths of the palace, it was really the first time that Yin Yunhua had seen such a scene. At this time, the servant carrying the blood-stained mat just walked to the side of the three people. The blood-stained mat suddenly scattered for some reason, and a bloody arm suddenly drooped down weakly. Yin Yunhua screamed again, and her originally pale little face was now bloodless. Who is making noise here? At this time, Wang Yi, who was wearing the chief eunuch uniform, walked out of the palace gate with a cold face and a horsetail whisk in his hand. That pair of indifferent eyes directly fell on Su Wan and Yin Yunhua. This slave deserves to die. This slave deserves to die. Yin Yunhua panicked and immediately pulled Su Wan to kneel on the ground, her teeth chattering. Steward Wang. At this time, Chunji staggered to the front of Wang Yi and said in a low voice while saluting, Steward Wang, the two of them are Yin Yunhua and Su Wan of the Shangfu Bureau. This little girl is timid. Don't be angry, Oh? When Wang Yi heard Chunji's report, his eyes flickered slightly as he looked at the two women. These two little palace maids looked like they had just entered the palace not long ago. They looked to be 14 or 15 years old, and they both looked upright and delicate. But, since the people have been found, hurry up and report to His Majesty. Don't just stand there and kneel. Hurry up and catch up with Chunji. After saying that, Wang Yi couldn't help but use his horsetail whisk to fiercely hit Chunji. As a chamberlain, he must learn to figure out the emperor's intentions. Although His Majesty did not say much in the Shangfu Bureau, Wang Yi had long seen that His Majesty seemed to be specifically looking for these two little palace maids. Seeing that Chunji had not returned for a long time, His Majesty had become more and more irritable. Seeing this scene, Wang Yi took the initiative to volunteer to look for them. He did not expect that he would meet the main character as soon as he arrived at the palace gate. Chunji's expression changed when he was struck by Wang Yi's horsetail whisk, and he couldn't help but speed up his footsteps. He knew that Manager Wang was reminding him that His Majesty had been waiting impatiently since a long time ago, and if he was a few steps slower, he might lose his head. Fuck. For the sake of the head on my neck, I have to run as fast as I can. You too, hurry up if you don't want to die. As Chunji ran, he did not forget to look back at Su Wan and Yin Yunhua and shouted a few words in a low voice. Encountering such a big thing, his legs were already weak. How could he run? Yin Yunhua tightly held Su Wan's small hand beside her, her lips trembling slightly. Xiao Wan, don't be afraid. It's okay. His Majesty is wise. He won't kill the innocent. She was so scared that she couldn't walk, but Yin Yunhua did not forget to comfort Su Wan beside her. Although Su Wan's face was also pale, there was no trace of fear in her eyes. Instead, a trace of profound craftiness flashed across her eyes. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Chunji hadn't even entered the door when he bent over and shouted while sprinting. He prostrated himself on the ground and slid to the center of the main hall. This job, this proficiency, this posture, this perfection, really worthy of being the successor carefully cultivated by Wang Yi, Your Majesty, this slave has found the person. Chunji had been bending over and lowering his head since he entered the door. At this time, as he spoke, he secretly gestured to Su Wan and Yin Yunhua with his left hand behind him, You two still haven't come in to greet His Majesty. This slave greets His Majesty. Long live His Majesty. Su Wan and Yin Yunhua knelt on the ground and bowed their heads to greet His Majesty. At this time, on the embroidered couch in the center of the palace, Su Rue was wearing a black dragon robe embroidered with gold. His heavy gaze instinctively fell on Su Wan. Your mother. General Su wanted to cry but had no tears. In the previous world, his wife was at least a 17-year-old female high school student. What was she trying to do by turning into a 14-year-old little loli this time? Well, although General Su's previous world was also full of early marriages and early childbearing, after all, he had been to so many worlds and his thinking had changed a lot. I am now a law-abiding youth who loves small animals and looks at the traffic lights when crossing the road. Okay? What Lilicon, in fact, Su Wan's current appearance is also quite cute. Su Rue kept staring at Su Wan in a daze. As a result, the air in the entire hall froze. No one dared to take a deep breath. Everyone lowered their heads and dared not make any movements, for fear of disturbing His Majesty and dying without an intact corpse. In short, His Majesty was too terrifying today. It was better for everyone to pretend to be dead. Time passed minute by minute. When Su Wan's legs were numb from kneeling, Su Rue, who was on the brocade couch, finally reacted. With a handsome face, he looked at Su Wan and Yin Yunhua in the main hall. As palace servants of the Shangfu Bureau, you actually left your post without permission. Do you two know your crime? Although his voice was still so cold, Su Rue's tone was obviously much gentler. Your Majesty. Seeing that the Emperor was going to punish them, Yin Yunhua immediately raised her head nervously. She couldn't let Su Wan be punished with her. After all, Su Wan left her post without permission to treat her. Even if she was going to be beheaded, Yin Yunhua didn't want to implicate other innocent people. Thinking of this, her gaze gradually became firm and her heart didn't seem to be so afraid. Your Majesty, it's this slave's fault. Su Wan suddenly spoke before Yin Yunhua. Your Majesty, everything is this slave's idea. Please punish me, Your Majesty. It's you? Su Rue's eyes flashed, and he looked at Su Wan with a slightly profound look. No, it's not. Your Majesty is actually. Shut up. Seeing that Yin Yunhua was going to take over him again, Su Rue couldn't bear it and interrupted her. Didn't he go through so much trouble just to find an opportunity to be alone with his wife for a while? Female lead, what are you doing? Can you still make people fall in love happily? Feeling Su Rue's anger, everyone in the room knelt on the ground in fear. Your Majesty, please calm down. When the Emperor is angry, millions of corpses will be laid. This is definitely not a joke. Everyone retreat. Su Wan, you stay. Su Rue, who was on the couch, took the opportunity to wave his sleeves. Hearing His Majesty speak, the rest of the people in the Shangfu Bureau breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. Everyone wished they could grow 2 more legs so that they could run out immediately. Everyone else quickly retreated. Only Yin Yunhua was still kneeling in the same place. Her face was unafraid of death. It was as if she wanted to die together with Su Shaowan. No, it was the rhythm of living and dying together. Seeing that the female lead was so sentimental and righteous, General Su's face became even more gloomy. Get out. The word go hadn't fallen yet when Yin Yunhua felt a gust of wind rushing towards her chest. Then her thin and weak body immediately flew out of the hall like a kite with a broken string, and the palace gate also closed without any wind at this time. Hello, Holy Mother Yin. Goodbye, Holy Mother Yin. The whole world was finally quiet. Su Rue smiled with satisfaction, but the smile on his face froze on his lips in the next second. Su Wan, who was originally kneeling on the ground, stood up at this time. Rubbing her numb knees, Su Wan walked step by step to the brocade couch with a smile. Your Majesty, you are really awe-inspiring, Su Rue. Your Majesty's dragon robe is also very beautiful. Seeing that Su Rue didn't speak, Su Wan continued to smile. Her slender, white, and tender little fingers gently swept over Su Rue's dragon robe, and then her eyes fell on Su Rue's 9 dragons jade belt. The sewing of this belt is also first class. I heard that it was personally embroidered with gold thread by Yunfei Nyongyang. who is the best at needlework. What the hell is Yun Fei? Su Rui's face stiffened. His slender and powerful arm pulled hard and pulled the thin and petite Su Shaowan into his arms. Wife, don't laugh. I'm panicking just looking at you. Listen to my explanation, Og. And Su Wan, who was sitting in Su Rui's arms, suddenly wrinkled her nose and sniffed him hard. So fragrant. This fragrance seems to be... Wife, I was wrong. General Su wanted to cry. Before the court session, His Majesty the Emperor had already taken several baths, okay? And after the court session, His Majesty the Emperor, who loves his wife as much as his life, first killed his way to Jingyun Palace, and then killed his way to the Shangfu Bureau, killing all the people who caused his wife to suffer. Where is the fragrance coming from now? It's clearly the smell of blood. Hearing Su Rui take the initiative to admit his mistake, Su Wan's drooping eyes flashed with a smile, but the expression on her face was still like a smile yet not a smile. Your Majesty, you hold life and death in your hands. You can turn your hand and call the clouds and cover your hand and call the rain. How could you be wrong? Su Rui. Just when Su Rui was full of powerlessness and felt that he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River this time, Su Wan, who was in his arms, suddenly turned around, a pair of arms wrapped around Su Rui's body, and her pink and sparkling lips smacked on his lips. Happiness came too suddenly. When Su Rui reacted, Su Wan, who was in his arms, was already trembling with laughter. Okay, you played with me? His Majesty the Emperor, who was slow on the uptake, finally put down the boulder in his heart. His handsome face also had a bit of a relaxed smile. Wife, you're not angry? You really scared me to death. That's why it's said that henpecked and henpecked are a group of very simple creatures. You think you've smoothly passed? Chapter 163. The door of the Shangfu Bureau's main hall had been closed, and no one knew what happened inside. Ever since Yin Yunhua was swept out of the main hall by Su Rui's internal energy, she was in a state of stupefaction. At this time, her heart was full of concern for Su Wan's safety. After entering the palace for more than a year, Yin Yunhua had long been accustomed to being bullied, and she was also used to subconsciously protecting Yin Yuqing when she encountered anything. In Yin Yunhua's heart, Yin Yuqing was originally her master, and now she was her younger sister. It was a matter of course for her to protect her and even suffer for her. Since Yin Yunhua entered the Shangfu Bureau and separated from Yin Yuqing, she met Su Wan again. From the beginning of their acquaintance, Su Wan had been helping her, and the two had been supporting each other. Yin Yunhua was a few months older than Su Wan. She felt that she should treat Yin Yuqing the same way she treated Yin Yuqing, protecting Su Wan and everything about her. But today, Yunhua, Liao Si, dressed in a brocade dress, stood behind Yin Yunhua at some point. Seeing her worried look, Liao Si couldn't help but pat her on the shoulder. Yunhua, don't worry, Su Wan should be fine. As she spoke, Liao Si's eyes couldn't help but look at the closed palace door. She clearly remembered that when His Majesty first arrived at the Shangfu Bureau, he killed several people without saying a word. Now, there was no sound in the palace, and His Majesty did not call anyone in, so at least Su Wan was still alive. After an unknown amount of time, just after everyone else in the Shangfu Bureau was busy, Yin Yunhua was still waiting anxiously in the palace garden. At this time, a low and indifferent male voice finally came from the main hall. Wang Yi, who had been conscientiously guarding the entrance of the main hall, heard the emperor's call and immediately pushed open the door and walked in quickly. As Wang Yi's figure disappeared, Yin Yunhua in the palace garden looked at the closed door again, and her heart was even more worried. Your Majesty. At this time, Wang Yi had walked quickly to the center of the main hall, bowing and waiting for his master's instructions. Wang Yi, Palace maid Su Wan has violated the rules of the palace and will be banished to Zinzheku to work for a month from now on. You will handle this matter personally. Wang Yi, who had his head lowered, quickly heard Su Rui's instructions. He immediately nodded and subconsciously searched for the little palace maid's figure in the corner of his eyes. No? Wang Yi froze. He remembered that the little palace maid called Su Wan was kneeling in that position before he left. How did she disappear? Steward Wang, are you looking for this servant? A crisp female voice suddenly sounded in front of Wang Yi. He subconsciously raised his head and was immediately stunned on the spot. His mouth was slightly open, and he couldn't close it at all. On the embroidered couch in front of him, the emperor reclined with a satisfied expression. The young palace maid was like a cat, comfortably nestled in the emperor's arms. At this moment, she was lazily raising her clear eyes and looking at Wang Yi with a smile. Steward Wang, I must have raised my head the wrong way. And Wang Yi was shocked and immediately lowered his head quickly. Seeing that Wang Yi had the awareness he should have so quickly, Su Rue also smiled with satisfaction. Wang Yi, I trust you the most. I will leave this matter to you. Go do it immediately. As he spoke, Su Rue couldn't help but look down at Su Wan in his arms with a face full of reluctance. Seeing Su Rue open his mouth to say something, Su Wan raised her finger and gently rubbed it on his lips. Then she turned over and sat next to Su Rue. She leaned against his ear with a mysterious face and whispered, Your Majesty, I will wait for you in the Zinzheku tonight. Hearing Su Wan's words, His Majesty the Emperor's face was slightly happy. It was still his wife who knew his intentions. General Su, are you sure? Su Wan, hee. Steward Wang, let's go. At this time, Su Wan had already gotten down from the embroidered couch and walked to Wang Yi. Miss Su, please. Wang Yi lowered his tone and spoke to Su Wan in a very respectful tone. At this time, if he still didn't understand what His Majesty came to the Shangfu Bureau for in the morning, then he really had lived these 30 years in vain. Steward Wang is too polite. This servant is now a sinner. How can I dare to walk in front of you? Su Wan heard Wang Yi's words, but she smiled slightly and raised her hand to make a gesture at Wang Yi. Steward Wang, please go first. Oh. When Wang Yi heard Su Wan's words, his eyes turned and he immediately turned to walk in front, while Su Wan lowered her head and followed behind him. When she was about to go out, she felt the familiar and gentle gaze that had been watching her from behind. Su Wan couldn't help but turn her head and smile at Su Rue. The palace door opened again. Seeing the figure of Wang Yi and Su Wan, Yin Yunhua, who had been waiting anxiously, immediately rushed over. Xiao Wan, are you okay? Impudent. Seeing Yin Yunhua rushing up to grab Su Wan's hand, Wang Yi's face immediately turned cold. He swept his horsetail whisk and swept Yin Yunhua aside. Is Miss Su's hand something you can touch? That belongs to His Majesty, Steward Wang. Chun Ji, who had been waiting in the courtyard, immediately trotted up at this time. He first rolled his eyes at Yin Yunhua, then Chun Ji smiled at Wang Yi and lowered his body. Steward Wang, this little girl is scared silly. Don't lower yourself to her level. This Su Wan, His Majesty means, banish Zinzheku for a month. Hearing Chun Ji's words, Wang Yi whispered coldly, Zinzheku? Chun Ji's face changed slightly, and Yin Yunhua's face had long turned ashen. What kind of place was Zinzheku? That was a place in the harem that was even lower than the Cold Palace. It was not a place for people to stay at all. Steward Wang. Yin Yunhua suddenly knelt on the ground and grabbed Wang Yi's boots with both hands. Steward Wang, this servant wants to see His Majesty. This servant is willing to take Su Wan's place to be punished. 1 month, no. 2 months is fine. I beg Steward Wang to fulfill my wish. Wang Yi, do you think Miss Su went there to be punished? She went there to be a great aunt. Okay? Steward Wang. Chun Ji on the side also couldn't bear it at this time. This Su Wan, she is also conscientious in the Shangfu Bureau. Steward Wang, do you think you can beg His Majesty? You don't have to plead for her anymore. Otherwise, be careful that you won't be able to keep your head. Wang Yi was also at his wit's end. He immediately glared at them with a fierce look on his face. Someone, pull this little palace maid away for me. As he spoke, 2 inner servants quickly stepped forward and pulled Yin Yunhua, who had been pulling Wang Yi's boots, to the side. Let's go. Wang Yi straightened his body and strode forward. Su Wan followed behind him and looked at Yin Yunhua, who was pulled to the side. She couldn't help but smile comfortingly at her with a pale face. Sister Yunhua, don't worry, I can stand it. As she spoke, she quickly turned her head and quickly followed behind Wang Yi. After several people walked away, Yin Yunhua was slowly released. Xiaowan, Xiaowan. Yin Yunua's face was already full of tears. Seeing Chunji still in the courtyard, Yin Yunhua immediately grabbed Chunji's sleeves as if she had found a life-saving straw. Chungonggong, save me, save me. Seeing that Yin Yunhua was crying pitifully, Chunji rolled his eyes. Okay, Zajia's clothes are going to be dirted by you. Poor Chen Xiaoji, who loved beauty, had to change into new clothes early in the morning. Zajia will go to the Zinzeku to buy some money. You have to pay for this money yourself. Speaking of this, Chunji couldn't help but hug his little sunny egg tightly. He was a soft-hearted person. He couldn't bear to see these girls crying and wiping their tears in front of him. However, a person must have principles. For example, Chen Xiaoji's principle was, you can mess up my hair, I will tolerate you, but you must not touch my wallet. I will fight you to the death. Chingonggong's stinginess was also well known in the Shangfu Bureau. In fact, with his official position, his monthly salary was very high, and he had the filial piety of the servants and palace maids every now and then. It was reasonable to say that he was also a small nouveau riche, but he was the biggest miser in the Shangfu Bureau. No matter what he encountered, he would not spare a single cent even if he was beaten to death. At this time, hearing that Chunji was willing to go to the Zinzeku to buy some money, Yin Yunhua immediately wiped her tears and handed her purse to Chunji. Although he was stingy, he was not greedy, so Yin Yunhua was not afraid of Chunji. Shaking the purse that Yin Yunhua handed to him, Chunji frowned. Is this all you have saved? Is it not enough? Yin Yunua's face also changed, and then she suddenly thought of something. Chungonggong, I can go raise money? At this time, Yin Yunhua naturally thought of Yin Yuqing, who was working in Lu Gairen's palace. Chungonggong, you must wait for me. I will go raise money now. Chapter 164. Imperial Harem, Literary Splendor Residence. Lu Gairen, who was once favored by His Majesty, lived here. Why did it have to be said that it was once? Because ever since Lu Gairen, who could sing and dance, entered the palace, His Majesty rarely summoned Lu Gairen to serve him. The atmosphere in Literary Splendor Residence has been very depressing these past few days, and today was a bit strange. Yuqing, did you really find out? At this time, Lu Gairen was letting the palace maid beside her dress up. A bright palace dress set off her fair and delicate face, making her look very charming and charming. At this time, hearing Lu Gairen's question, Yin Yuqing, who had been standing respectfully to the side, immediately replied in a low voice. Replying to Master, this slave inquired clearly that Lu Gairen offended the emperor's face and was executed. Today, because His Majesty was in a bad mood, he started a massacre in the imperial harem. Both Jingyan Palace and the Shangfu Bureau were affected. When she said this, Yin Yuqing's voice trembled. Lu Gairen raised her beautiful eyes and looked at Yin Yuqing's small face slightly. Yuqing, I remember that your sister works in the Shangfu Bureau, right? Is she okay? Thank you for your concern, this slave. When this slave just went out to inquire, His Majesty's people were still surrounding the Shangfu Bureau. I don't know what the situation inside is like. At this point, Yin Yuqing's face couldn't help but show a bit of worry. She and Yin Yunhua were not sisters, but thanks to her care in the past year, Yin Yuqing was not without feelings for her. Of course, Yin Yuqing, as a concubine daughter of the Yin family, had been treated coldly by others since she was a child. She had long seen through the fickleness of the world. Don't look at how she was a month younger than Yin Yunhua. She was already very scheming. Now, she behaved like this in front of Lu Gairen. First, she wanted Lu Gairen to see how much she valued friendship and loyalty. Second, she planned to take the opportunity to ask for permission to visit the Shangfu Bureau again. What if she was lucky enough to meet His Majesty there? Lu Gairen didn't know Yin Yuqing's thoughts at this time. She was indeed deceived by Yin Yuqing's immature face. Lu Gairen was naturally very happy to learn that Lu Gairen was dead, but His Majesty was a bit abnormal today. In Lu Gairen's impression, His Majesty had always been very calm, and his character was not tyrannical. What crime did Lu Gairen commit to make His Majesty so angry? The tranquil Cloud Palace was the resting palace of honored consort Shu. She was already an imperial consort, so the power behind her naturally could not be underestimated. Today, His Majesty had actually massacred the tranquil Cloud Palace. Then, what was the connection? Needless to say, the women in the harem must have a certain level of reasoning ability. Otherwise, they wouldn't even know how they died. Lu Guerin pondered for a long time but still couldn't find the connection between Yu Guerin and Xu Fei. At this time, an inner attendant of flourishing literature residence hurried into the room and whispered a few words in Lu Guerin's ear. Lu Guerin couldn't help raising his eyes to look at Yin Yuqing. Yuqing, your sister has come to see you. Go and see what she wants. Yin Yunhua came? Hearing Lu Guerin's words, Yin Yuqing immediately left in a hurry and then quickly walked out of the dormitory. Outside Wenhua House, Yin Yunhua was anxiously pacing back and forth at the gate. Sister. Yin Yuqing's face flashed when she saw Yin Yunhua's expression. She was very familiar with Yin Yunhua's expression. It seemed that something had really happened to the Shangfu Bureau. Yuqing. Seeing Yin Yuqing's face, Yin Yunhua immediately grabbed her sister's hand and said anxiously, Yuqing, you must save Xiao Wan. Save her. Something happened to Su Wan? Could it be? Yin Yuqing's expression was firm, and she patted Yin Yunhua's hand hard. Sister, speak slowly. Did something happen in the Shangfu Bureau? While Yin Yunhua and Yin Yuqing were discussing how to rescue Su Wan had already followed Wang Yi to the Zinzheku, which was located in the innermost secluded corner of the imperial city and was the dirtiest and worst place in the entire imperial city. When the supervisor nanny of the Zinzheku saw that Steward Wang had personally brought people over, she immediately ran out of the door with small steps and came to Wang Yi. Steward Wang, why did you come in person? By Mama, your bitter days are about to come to an end. Seeing By Mama's charming smile at herself, Wang Yi whispered with a slightly deeper meaning. This is. By Mama's eyes lit up and she subconsciously approached Wang Yi. She raised her hand and stuffed a banknote into Wang Yi's hand. Please guide me, Steward Wang. One of the rules of survival for the harem. No matter when and where, you must carry a purse, banknote, and a lot of light valuables with you. These things may be used at any time, and sometimes can even save lives. Hey, By Mama is too polite. Wang Yi unexpectedly blocked the banknote and turned to look at Su Wan respectfully. Miss Su, this is the supervisor of the Zinzheku, By Mama. Hello, By Mama. Su Wan nodded at By Mama. Although By Mama had stayed in the Zinzheku for many years and hadn't developed much, her eyes were very sharp. Seeing that Wang Yi was so polite to Miss Su in front of her, By Mama naturally didn't dare to be arrogant. When she heard Su Wan's question, she immediately nodded and smiled. Hello, Miss Su. Hello, Miss Su. Steward Wang, Miss Su is. After By Mama greeted Su Wan, she looked at Wang Yi with a puzzled face. Wang Yi gently leaned over to By Mama's ear and whispered a few words. By Mama's face changed again and again, and finally, her whole face was a little distorted with excitement. Steward Wang, don't worry. Leave Miss Su to this servant. This servant will never let her lose a single hair. Hearing By Mama's answer, Wang Yi nodded with satisfaction. Okay, I have to go back and report to His Majesty. Having said this, Wang Yi couldn't help but look at Su Wan again and whispered in a low voice. Miss Su, do you have any words for this servant to pass on to His Majesty? Hearing Wang Yi's question, Su Wan smiled lightly and whispered in Wang Yi's ear. Wang Yi was stunned when he heard Su Wan's words, but he still nodded vigorously. Miss Su, please rest assured, this servant will definitely pass on your words to His Majesty. This servant will take his leave now. With that, Wang Yi turned and strode away. Seeing that Wang Yi had gone far away, By Mama had a gentle face and looked at Su Wan with a smile. Miss Su, this Zinzheku is very simple and crude. If you don't mind, you can temporarily stay in this old servant's room. Don't worry, this old servant will keep the room very clean and all the supplies will be replaced with new ones. No need to go through so much trouble. Su Wan also smiled at By Mama. Just prepare the worst and crudest room for me. Remember, the worse the better. By Mama. Miss Su, are you trying to torture yourself? Although she cursed in her heart when she thought of what Steward Wang had promised her. As long as she served this master well, he would be able to transfer her out of the Zinzheku. With such a good opportunity in front of her, how could she give it up? By Mama clapped her hands. Miss, Don't worry. There is nothing else in this Zinseku, but dirty and messy places are everywhere. Please go. Hearing Bai Mama's words, Suwon nodded with a smile. I am naturally reassured by Bai Mama's work. In the future, Suwon will have to thank Bai Mama for taking care of me here. Also, I hope Bai Mama won't tell anyone about anything that happened here. Words must not be passed to 6 ears, the second rule of the harem. This old servant understands. Miss Su can rest assured. With that said, Bai Mama immediately straightened up and shouted, Little girl, let me tell you, once you enter my Zinseku, you have to listen to me, Bai Mama's words. Do you think this is still your Shangfu bureau? You really don't know what's good for you. I guess you can only stay here for the rest of your life. Hurry up and follow me. While speaking, Bai Mama had already arrogantly led Suwon into the gate of the Zinseku. In this harem, there was really no shortage of anything but men, especially characters with superb acting skills. Any random palace maid could probably be qualified as a movie queen in modern times. In the Zinseku, a group of palace maids who were about to go out saw Bai Mama's figure and all bowed respectfully. When they saw the young Suwon behind her, they all showed a look of pity. What kind of place was this Zinseku? In the entire imperial city, even in the imperial palace and the imperial mausoleum, the most arduous and tiring tasks, such as cleaning toilets and pouring out night incense, were the responsibility of the Zinseku. They had always been the group of people who worked the hardest, had the smallest monthly salary, and had the lowest status. There were many palace maids who were sentenced to the Zinseku at first and thought that they could get out after their sentence was completed. However, in less than a month after entering this place, their bodies were already in poor health. The masters never lacked people to order around. Over time, they had long forgotten about you. Once you came in, you couldn't get out. Under everyone's sympathetic and pitiful eyes, Suwon first followed Bai Mama into the room. This was the rule that every newcomer had to go through. It was said to be lectured by Bai Mama, but in fact, it was to show filial piety to Bai Mama. If you have a lot of silver, then you can do some less tiring work. If you don't have silver, not only will you be sent to do the most bitter and tiring work, but you will also be beaten up by Mama. Spare me, Mama. Not long after, sure enough, Suwon's miserable scream came from the room. The people in the courtyard silently looked at each other. No one spoke, and some people's eyes carried a smile of schadenfreude. Finally, a newcomer came. This task of cleaning the toilet, I won't continue to do it, right? Chapter 165. It was night and the moonlight was bright. Suwon sat in the narrow and simple room that Bai Mama had specially prepared for herself. She was bored and counted the stars in the sky through the broken window. Just as she counted to 101, the broken wooden door was suddenly blown open by a gust of wind, and a slender figure appeared in front of Suwon like a ghost. Seeing Su Rue suddenly appear in front of her wearing casual clothes, Suwon stood up and smiled at him. You're here? And Su Rue stared at Suwon and also looked at everything in the room. How do people live in this place? His brows furrowed tightly and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. This is just a facade for Yin Yunhua to see. Who said I want to live here? Suwon raised her eyebrows at Su Rue. Don't you want me to sleep with you? Or, which concubine are you going to recruit to the Chinkuan Palace to serve you? There's no such thing. Of course, I want to sleep with my wife. It's getting late. Haven't you eaten yet? Suwon interrupted Su Rue's words. When Wang Yi left in the morning, Suwon specifically told him to tell His Majesty not to eat dinner before coming over at night. And Su Rue naturally did as Suwon said. Hearing Suwon's words, he subconsciously touched his stomach. I haven't eaten yet. Xiaowon, what do you want to eat with me? There's still time. Now, you have to help me do something. Suwon picked up a set of old servant clothes from her narrow wooden bed. You change your clothes first and then help me do some work. If you do well, I will personally cook delicious food for you tonight. There's actually this kind of treatment? Hearing Suwon's words, Su Rue immediately changed his clothes with a smile and then looked at his wife with a gentle face. Xiaowon, what do you want me to help you do? Sweep the courtyard or chop firewood? Well, it's nothing. Just clean the toilets in the nearby palace. Su Wan blinked a pair of clear black eyes and looked at Su Rue with a serious face. Her tone was still so indifferent and calm. Sweep. Sweep the toilets? Wife, are you joking? Look into my eyes. I'm serious. Su Wan stared at Su Rue with a serious expression. Now that the entire Zinseku knows that I offended by Mama, I naturally have to do the dirtiest and most tiring work. Although it sounded reasonable, Su Rue felt that his wife was looking at him a bit strangely. Could it be a trap? Isn't it just cleaning the toilet? At least it's better than pouring night incense, right? There was nothing in this world that could baffle our General Su. For the sake of his wife, for the sake of the delicacies his wife had personally made, General Su was willing to give it his all. Seeing that Su Rue really took the tools in the courtyard and went out, Su Wan didn't follow. She knew that Su Rue was a person who always did things as he said. He wouldn't lie and disdain to lie. Not long after, Su Rue came back with a cold expression. As soon as he entered the room, there was an unpleasant smell. Seeing his disdainful expression, Su Wan covered her mouth and smiled. Don't look so serious. I'll help you change your clothes. Let's go back to Chinkuan Palace, okay? Amen, Su Rue answered sullenly. He had to take a good bath after going back. The moon was in the middle of the sky, and the Chinkuan Palace was hazy. After Su Rue brought Su Wan back, he dismissed the people around him. Other than Wang Yi, no one else knew that there was another person in the palace. Soaking in the warm water and smelling the fragrance of the bath soup, Su Rue finally sighed comfortably. Are you done bathing? At this time, Su Wan's voice suddenly rang. Su Rue looked up to see Su Wan wearing a white undergarment. Her hair was scattered and she was holding a bowl of soup, smiling as she walked over. Right now, the owner of Su Wan's body wasn't even 15 years old. Although she had reached the marriageable age in the Great Shang dynasty, her face was still a bit immature and her figure hadn't fully developed. Under the snow-white undergarment, the slightly exquisite figure that belonged to a young girl made General Su turn his face away. Nanny, he couldn't continue looking. It was easy to commit a crime if he looked for too long. Are you hungry? At this time, Su Wan was already sitting by the bathtub, her snow-white feet making a string of splashes on the water surface. Come here. I'll feed you the soup. I made it myself. Oh. Su Rue swam to Su Wan's side naked. Seeing him look up at her with sparkling eyes, Su Wan couldn't help but be in a good mood. She scooped a spoonful of soup and gently handed it to Su Rue. Seeing that Su Rue had finished the soup, Su Wan smiled at him. Does it taste good? It does. Su Rue nodded. His wife made the best soup in the world. It's good. Drink it all. Saying this, Su Wan scooped another spoonful of soup for Su Rue. She looked at the misty bathtub through the swaying bead curtain. The scene of the two getting along was exceptionally warm. Just that, a quarter of an hour later. Wife. Su Rue's voice was a bit hoarse and his gaze towards Su Wan became a bit gloomy. What did you use to make the soup? Oh, you can't tell? Su Wan slightly lowered her eyes and looked at Su Rue in the water. I just used some common tonics. Ginseng, deer penis, and so on. Didn't you like it a lot in Jin Xin Wang Fu? The word like was heavily emphasized by Su Wan. Hearing Su Wan's words, Su Rue's expression immediately changed. What happened to the gentle, virtuous, and considerate wife? Su Wan, you did it on purpose. You definitely did it on purpose. Wife. Su Rue climbed out of the bathtub and didn't bother to put on a robe. He directly hugged Su Wan's slightly cold body. I feel uncomfortable. I know you feel uncomfortable. Su Wan turned over and broke free from Su Rue's embrace. Then she looked at Wang Yi, who had been treating her as a background board not too far away. Steward Wang, bring the Imperial Concubine's card over. Wang Yi. What was with this inexplicable feeling of being shot while lying down? Wang Yi, get out. Without waiting for Wang Yi to move, Su Rue had already pulled up the robe on the ground. While pulling Su Wan to the dragon bed, he coldly shouted in a low voice. Understood. Wang Yi wiped the sweat on his forehead and quickly retreated. In front of the dragon bed, Su Rue threw Su Wan on the bed. Speak. What other moves do you have? Nothing. Su Wan innocently spread out her hands. Facing her husband, she couldn't bear to be ruthless. Tormenting him like this today was just because. That little bit of jealousy in her heart. She wouldn't allow anyone to touch her man. No more moves? Hearing Su Wan's answer and seeing her innocent expression lying on the bed, Su Rue couldn't help but take a deep breath. Since you're not going to torment me, then sleep. As he spoke, he lifted a corner of the brocade quilt and skillfully wrapped Su Wan's entire body with the quilt, pushing her to the innermost side of the bed. I'll cultivate for a bit. You sleep first. Seeing Su Rue sitting cross-legged on the bed planning to adjust his breathing, Su Wan rolled in the quilt like a small silkworm and rolled to Su Rue's side. Su Rue, you'll sleep with me? Hearing his wife's pitiful invitation, Su Rue's breath sank and he once again rolled Su Wan to the innermost side of the bed. Su Wan, go to sleep. Oh, then you should sleep early too. Don't tire yourself out. Seeing that Su Rue was so determined, Su Wan could only obediently shrink into a corner and close her eyes. Last night, her body had suffered for an entire night. Today, she could finally sleep well. Not long after, Su Wan entered dreamland. Seeing that Su Wan had fallen asleep, Su Rue then closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. Not long after, his body was covered in sweat. Su Wan, how much did you add to the soup? General Su began to regret rejecting Su Wan too straightforwardly. But when he opened his eyes again and saw the exceptionally peaceful face sleeping on the bed, Su Rue's gaze involuntarily softened. Forget it. Isn't it just adjusting her breathing for a night? It's not a big deal, as long as she doesn't talk about flipping the sign again and again in the future. Thinking like this, Su Rue once again closed his eyes and cultivated. In the middle of the night, the candlelight in the bedroom flickered. When Su Rue was concentrating on cultivating, Su Wan, who was in the bed, woke up at some point. A pair of clear eyes stared at Su Rue's back without blinking. Looking and looking, Su Wan couldn't help but curve her lips and once again closed her eyes to sleep peacefully. In this world, it's so good to have you. Before meeting Su Rue, she always felt that it didn't matter how she was by herself. But after meeting Su Rue, Su Wan increasingly felt that she couldn't leave him. She didn't dare to imagine what the world would be like without Su Rue. Just like Su Wan was General Su's reverse scale, Su Rue was also the forbidden area that Su Wan couldn't touch. Chapter 166. When Su Wan opened her eyes the next day, she found that she had returned to the small room in the Zinseku, and she was still wrapped in a thick and warm tribute blanket. Miss Su, are you up? Bai Mama's voice just sounded outside the room. Because Su Wan's room was in the innermost part of the Zinseku courtyard and its location was also remote, Bai Mama was not afraid of others seeing her here. Mama, please come in. Su Wan folded the blanket and placed it under the coarse quilt, and then slowly began to put on her clothes. The servants of the Zinseku wore the lowest grade of cloth clothes, which were very prickly on the body. Fortunately, Bai Mama had already done something to the clothes. Although Su Wan's clothes looked the same as others from the outside, the inside of the clothes was sewn with soft satin. This kind of thing to deceive people was very common in the palace, so there was no need to spend time to prepare. Su Wan hadn't put on the outer palace dress when Bai Mama came in with toiletries. Good morning, Miss Su. Did you sleep well last night? Facing Su Wan, Bai Mama's posture was very low. Thank you for your concern, Mama. I slept very well. Su Wan replied softly, and Bai Mama's gaze swept over Su Wan's bed. When she saw the corner of the blanket exposed under the quilt, her eyes changed and the smile on her face became more eager. Miss, the Zinseku is really simple and crude. Let this old slave serve you to freshen up. All right. Seeing Bai Mama's enthusiasm, Su Wan naturally nodded her head. In the harem, if someone fawns over you, it proves that you are doing well and have value. At this time, in the face of others' goodwill, you must not refuse, because no matter what reason you have to refuse others, it is likely to be misunderstood as looking down on them. This is a taboo for people in the harem. No one knows who will be down and out in the next second, and no one knows who will be successful in the next moment. In the depths of the palace, you can only make friends and never make enemies. Su Wan has actually done a lot of tasks in the imperial palace. She has long been clear about the ways of the harem. She also knows that Bai Mama's treatment of herself was naturally ordered by Wang Yi. If she doesn't give her this opportunity, I'm afraid she will always be anxious, right? Under the service of Bai Mama, Suwon simply washed up. After finishing some, Bai Mama packed up the things and looked at Suwon with a smile again. Miss Su, what do you want to eat for breakfast? This old servant has a small kitchen. If you don't mind, this old servant can cook for you. I'm not picky about food. Nanny, if someone comes to ask about me today, you know what to say, right? Suwon sat on the wooden bed and raised her eyelids to look at Bai Mama. Bai Mama was a little scared by her gaze. You say, this little girl has delicate features, but why is her eyes so penetrating when she looks at people? This old servant knows what to say. Miss, you can rest assured. Bai Mama patted her chest and repeatedly assured Suwon. That's good. Also, Suwon narrowed her eyes and whispered again. If someone comes to plead for me, don't agree without this amount. Looking at Suwon waving her palm, Bai Mama couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. 500 taels? She had worked in the Zinseku for all these years, but she had never received so much money at one time. 500 taels of silver was also a large amount of expenditure for an ordinary palace maid, and Suwon knew very well that Yin Yunua's monthly salary was sent back to her hometown to her family. There were many children in her family, and life was very difficult. Otherwise, she would not have been sold to Yin Fu as a maid. 500 taels of silver was definitely an astronomical figure for Yin Yunua, and Holy Mother Yin had to take out the money in order to save Suwon. So, now the question was, what should she do to borrow 500 taels of silver? Come on, Holy Mother Yin. I'm optimistic about you. As Suwon expected, before the morning was over, Chonji came to the Zinseku with a smile on his face. Isn't this Chingonggong? What wind blew you here? Although they were both stewards, the Shangfu Bureau belonged to one of the 24 departments of the 6th Bureau and was a department with real power. Compared with the Zinseku, which was despised by tens of thousands of people, it was absolutely like heaven and earth. Therefore, when Bai Mama saw Chinji, she immediately greeted him with a smile. Bai Mama, I'm here to give you some hometown specialties. Chunji's phoenix eyes raised, but he appeared very amorous. Bai Mama looked at Chunji's smiling face, and her expression was a little strange. It must be said that this Chingonggong was also a weirdo. He had a girly appearance since he was a child. It was said that when he was a child, his family was poor and owed a lot of money to others. The creditor took a fancy to him and wanted to snatch him back to be his wife. Later, when he learned that he was a man, the man still didn't give up and actually wanted to take him back home to be a male attendant. At that time, Chunji was young but had a strong mind. On the night of the bridal chamber, he injured the man and then escaped in a hurry. At that time, the imperial city was selecting an inner attendant. In order to be afraid that the man would report him to the authorities and put him in prison, Chunji simply signed up and entered the palace to be an inner attendant. When he first entered the palace, Chunji was often bullied because of his fair and delicate appearance, but he never said a word. He always stabbed people from behind with a knife. Stabbing and stabbing, he entered the eyes of Steward Wang. Later, he was promoted all the way to the position of the steward of the Shangfu Bureau. This kind of resume can only be observed and not copied by Mama. Look at this Hatian Jujube, it's very sweet this year. Chunji didn't pay attention to Bai Mama's strange expression and stuffed a small basket of jujubes into her hands. Bai Mama smiled and raised her hand to pick up the inconspicuous pouch in the basket without a trace. Her face was slightly embarrassed. Ai, Chingonggong, I'm old and my teeth aren't good. I can't eat dry, hard, and sweet things recently. Thank you for your kindness, but this thing, you should take it back. And, hearing Bai Mama's words, Chunji's expression froze. He hadn't said what he wanted her to do, and she refused so bluntly. What does this mean? Bai Mama, you're not giving Zeiji a face-ah. As he said this, Chunji's face gradually became cold. Ai, Chingonggong, don't worry, let's talk further. Bai Mama carefully pulled Chunji to the corner outside the door. You should be here for that girl Suwon this time, right? Exactly. Chunji nodded and couldn't help but look at Bai Mama. Did someone else come? This. You don't have to worry about it. She was personally brought by Steward Wang. Steward Wang repeatedly told me to discipline her well. I really don't dare to make the decision without authorization, unless. Speaking of this, the smile on by Mama's face was somewhat meaningful. Seeing her smile, Chunji immediately understood. Don't beat around the bush with Sejia, say a number. Helping others do things, Chunji didn't feel distressed about the money. At this time, he put on a look of indifference. About this, by Mama smiled and raised her hand to fan her face. Seeing her action, Chunji couldn't help but whisper, By Mama, you're asking for an exorbitant price. Aren't you afraid of being too full? By Mama just smiled brightly. Do you think she's willing? Isn't this what Great Aunt ordered? Seeing that By Mama just smiled and didn't speak, Chunji frowned again. Just this number, can't it be less? Not a single cent less. By Mama's face also became serious. The risk this time is too great. Even if I get this silver, this old servant can only try her best to deal with it. Seeing that By Mama was sincere, Chunji had to nod. Okay, I understand. I'll go back and study it. Saying this, he tightened the basket in his hand and Chunji left with small steps. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.